check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Okay, we should be good. Here we are with TRC yet again. Ooh, a little bit of contact there between Good Gazelle and Metrovkinen. It's going to be a tight qualifying here, and there will be some varying conditions. We've got a 2 hour and 4 minute race tonight. Not a true 2.4 hour, but a 2 hour and 4 minute race. 3 stops tonight. A lot of cars out on track. And a lot of speed out there on track, a lot of talent. Current top time is a 2:17.3 by Metrovkinen in the Porsche 992 GT3R. And Busch, usually a top contender, no stranger to pole position, currently sitting in P3 with the Aston Martin. Now, qualifying only gets you so far in a long race like this. Race conditions change, races change, a lot of variables. Some you can control, some you can't, like weather and traffic. A lot of things to consider in this race tonight. Thank you all for joining tonight for the TRC Summer SRO Series Spa 2.4 hour. Hello, Oliver. You are going to be racing tonight. Are you going to be racing tonight in for your dad, or are you going to be racing in your own car in your own name? Because I would love to see you guys race together on track, but I understand that you may be driver swapping in real life. Little father and son driver swap, father and son endurance setup. Metrovkinen showing that the Porsche is definitely a force to be reckoned with here at Spa. The 2:17.3 still the time to beat. Well, Oliver, if you would not mind, if you would consider hitting that follow button for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. It's going to be a long race tonight, and there are varied conditions. We do have a little bit of participation, that wet stuff falling from the sky, in play tonight. There are chances of short little thunderstorms, not any long downpours. At least that's not what is necessarily in the forecast. I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility. But so far, just looking at a few small showers here and there, and big strategy calls in regards to those small showers. Do you stay out on slicks and think the track is going to be dry enough? I guess it's also going to depend when that rain happens. If the rain happens at night, it's going to take a lot longer to dry. You'd probably be better off coming in for slicks. If it's going to be a little bit of rain in the day, then maybe you think that that rain will burn off. But currently right now in the practice session, not much sun poking through, a lot of clouds. And a pretty long list of drivers entered so far. Still got about 15 minutes before qualifying starts. And it's going to be a long qualifying tonight. longer than usual. I believe it's a 20-minute qualifier, or maybe even a 30-minute qualifier. Metrovkin still up in the lead currently. Does not mean anything yet as it's just practice, but Metrovkin with a 2:17.3 and Harrell just a 10th.5 behind in that Ford Mustang GT3. And Busch less than half a second back in P3. A lot of variance in lap times out there, as you're either on it here or you're not at Spa. And Spa does a lot of take and not much give. You lose it at Eau Rouge. It is very easy to end your race there. You lose it at Blanchimont, also easy to lose your race there. You have to pick your battles very, very cautiously here. It is extremely tight up through Eau Rouge and through Blanchimont. There's a lot of sections here where you can't go 2x2. Down here at the hairpin of Bruxelles, definitely a spot where you may see some attempts at an overtake, but very, very hard to go around the outside. Once you're up on the inside, that pretty much guarantees you the move unless you can put on a monumental attack from the outside. You can get set up for the left-hander of turn 13. And you come through Pouan, very, very hard to go through here 2x2. Anything that is off of the optimal racing line is going to slow you down greatly as you come through Pouan. Then as we come through campus, another section where you've just got to line up. There is no room for 2x2. One car will lose out because it is very suboptimal to be off the racing line there through campus. Same thing with Stavelot down here. The double left hand, or actually right-handers, the double square right-handers, very, very hard to go by 2x2. And then as you come out of Paul Freire curve, now you can try to get 2x2, but it depends on how close you are coming out of Stavelot, then all the way down the back straight before you come into Blanchimont. Definitely not going to go 2x2 there, at least not at full speed. And then you come down into the bus stop, hard braking around the 150, anywhere between the 150 and 100 board. You could push that braking very, very deep, and then you come back out to cross the start-finish line and start your new lap where you head up the hill towards La Source. Hard on the brakes, cutting very, very narrow to the inside, almost hitting the wall on the inside as we see Good Gazelle abandoning the lap here. What is up, Matthias? Looking forward to some good racing tonight. Looking forward to some weather, to some pit strategy. Hopefully to a little bit of drama. Not too much drama, but hopefully a little bit of drama. A big, big showing of a lot of different types of cars here tonight. Got everything, pretty much every make. I don't see any Lexus out there, but I know there are some drivers that would like to be out there on a Lexus. But we've got everything: McLaren, Ford, Mercedes, Ferrari, Porsche, Aston Martin. I believe that's the majority of what we got. There was someone driving a Bentley earlier on in the season. Enough energy to stream for 2 hours? I've got plenty of energy to stream for 2 hours. 2 hours is easy work. As we're on with Douglas doing a practice pit stop here. Pit stops are an extremely crucial part of these races tonight. You cannot afford a drive-through penalty or even a stop-and-go penalty here, especially at Spa. It has an extremely long pit lane, comes all the way from the bus stop, all the way around to the exit of Eau Rouge, also known as Radillon at the top of the hill. that Miller just came through there. That white line is the exit of the pit lane. That is almost a quarter of the lap that you would spend at pit limiter speed. Granted, the pit limiter is a little bit faster than other tracks here at Spa just because it is such a long pit lane. But at the same time, you do not want to get that drive-through penalty, especially for track limits, which we will probably see quite a few of tonight. Very, very easy to go off the track at Eau Rouge. Very easy to do that at Blanchimont. Couple places where you can cut the track, even possible to do it at La Source, which should be a little bit more rare. And right there at the exit of turn 13 between Bruxelles and Pouan, very, very easy to get a track cut there if you go out a little bit too wide, looking for a little bit of extra grip. Miller coming out of Pouan now with the Jeff's Bagel Run Ferrari 296 there. We are about 8 minutes away from qualifying getting started here tonight. That 2:17.3 by Metrovkin is still the time to beat. Bird and with the duo of Mark and Oliver will be doing an IRL father-son driver swap tonight during the pit stops. I wonder who's going to be in the car first and who's going to be out of the car. What time is it in the United States? It is 7:13 p.m. here now. It is in the later evening. Or I guess you could say right smack dab in the middle of the evening. Approaching the golden hour, as one would say. Oliver, let me know who's going to be in the car to start the race tonight. Obviously, you're not in the car right now. You're going to start. Well, good luck tonight. Who's going to qualify? I believe you'd probably be qualifying too. Father brings the car in, son's about to jump in it. Developing a story tonight as we got a live driver swap in the number 103 Lamborghini Huracan Evo. Very quickly approaching the qualifying session tonight. So, explaining the process or the order of events tonight, we will have a server reset here in about 5 minutes, and it will kick us into a short 10-minute practice session. When we are in that practice session, it will be time for maybe a final warm-up lap or some pit stop strategy because you would be in your declared pit box at that time. And then we will be doing a 15-minute qualifying. Very short qualifying, very crucial to get out there and get your lap, but also to be very mindful of traffic on your lap as well. We've got a 3-stop race tonight. 25 seconds each stop is the mandatory stop time, regardless of whether you take fuel or tires. If you take 1 liter of fuel, you will have a 25-second stop. If you take tires, it will be a 30-second stop. So, do you take tires 3 times? Do you just take tires twice? A little bit of a gamble here tonight in this 3-stop race. Winter with a little bit of a bobble getting the inside curb at Blanchimont. Saving the car, though. Very good practice there. Not a mistake that you want to make during the race, but good on Winter for saving that car there. Hopping on board with Douglas in the CrowdStrike Lamborghini Huracan. One thing that you'll notice in this series, there are no custom liveries. This series runs all official liveries, trying to mimic an official SRO series as close as possible. And we do have 12 times time progression here, so we will be seeing full day-night cycle in this race. And very busy track right now. Oh, you're all good, Danger Zone. There is no problem there. Darnell in the big shoes to fill. Manti Grello Porsche livery. Very, very big shoes to fill there. Up there with Kevin Estra and Thomas Preining. I'm not sure if Matt Campbell drove that car or not. I know Matt Campbell drove the Manti Shell car at the Bathurst 12 Hour this year, and I believe he won it in that car as well. Drain impact with the wall at Lacombe. The outside wall at Lacombe. Kelta coming in late into the picture, coming down the back straight headed towards Blanchimont. Very good sounding, that Aston Martin Vantage GT3. Hard on the brakes down towards the bus stop. And here in about a minute we should have a server reset. Any second now the screen will go blank, and we will be back into the session for that 10-minute practice and then get started with qualifying and then eventually our race tonight. Quite a few new names that I have not had on stream tonight, like Heiderstadt here, and as we get the server reset, we are back to the menu for a second before we get back into the session. And here very shortly we will be entering back into the race lobby Here in about 1 minute we will be rejoining the session, and then we will be back to coverage.
Green light, go, go, go.
Oop. It seems that we have had another reset. Once again, we'll be back in the session very shortly. We'll wait another 2 minutes.
Green light, go, go, go.
And we are back into the session. It's a short practice session, but we should see some warm-up laps or some pit stop practice. We do have a couple cars rolling out. Who is that currently? Looked like Rodriguez, but it seems to be a Lamborghini. Lamborghini of Bird out on track very early on. I believe that may be Oliver Bird, the son, and the father-son duo racing tonight. And that is Darnell taking to the track just behind, maybe for some pit stop practice, or we get a couple final warm-up laps here. Also, thank you to those tuning in on the YouTube side as well. Feel free to come over to the Twitch side, as that is where I primarily focus my attention. And if you are not following or subscribed to either the Twitch channel or the YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Very close to 200 on the Twitch channel and almost to 50 on the YouTube channel. Once again, 2.4 hours tonight, 15-minute qualifier coming up next. Do not know the weather conditions, because I do believe we have some variable weather in this race tonight. There is a chance of rain. There is no guaranteed rain. There is no guaranteed dry. There is a chance of anything happening. It could be a slight drizzle, could be a short downpour. There is no way to know. Currently, right now in this practice session, it's going to be dry. But who knows what it is for quali. Definitely going to want to see what kind of pit strategy we see, what kind of setups are on the cars now. Do you set up a conservative setup for both the wet and dry? Do you set up a car just for the dry? Do you set up a car just for the wet? Obviously, pit strategy and making sure that you're on the right tires at the right time will be a crucial factor as well. And we've got 29 drivers registered or in the session currently. That is almost the full entry list. Thank you guys for following. Just 3 away from 200. Thanks everybody for tuning in, as we are about to get this thing kicked off here shortly. We may have a server reset here in a second, just because I think someone may have a registration error, so we may get another server reset, we may not. But halfway through this short practice session, and thank you to everybody. We have now hit 200 followers. Thank you for following. Thank you for tuning in. Should be a good night tonight, and definitely some good racing tonight. Don't see any pit practice yet. Could see that during the qualifying session as well. Trovkinen was the car to beat in the practice session earlier with that 2:17.3. Darnell now taking to the top of the board. With a 2:19.5. Not quite the time that he's looking for yet, is capable of the 18s. Looking for a 17 though if he wants pole. But that is dry conditions. Qualifying could be completely in the wet. We do not know. But as the timer is ticking down, we're inching closer and closer to that qualifying session. Hopping on with Gonzalez in that very good sounding Mustang GT3. The good thing about the Mustang GT3 cars in Assetto Corsa is they don't fall apart quite like the real ones. These cars tend to stay together a little bit better than in real life, which at Le Mans there was only one rapid unassisted disassembly, which was a control arm that broke at Indianapolis at the 24-hour Le Mans this year. They didn't have any deck lids blowing off or wings break, although they still do have that shaky wing. Seems to be for the Assetto Corsa model. They definitely figured out how to make that wing stiffer, as it does not shake anywhere near as much, or it does not shake at all like the real wing does on those Mustang GT3s. Perot, also a newcomer to TRC in this series, also driving the Mustang Dark Horse. Heiderstadt, also a newcomer, also in the Dark Horse. These Dark Horse Mustangs are definitely a cool sight to see, taking place in all sorts of motorsport, all the way from Trans Am, NASCAR, V8 supercars, IMSA, World Endurance Championship, and I believe they do have a Dark Horse Cobra Jet or something similar to the Cobra jet from the previous Mustang iterations that would be in like a factory stock setting. And we are going to have a server reset here very shortly. Sorry about that delay, but we do have one entry that is trying to get into the session that is currently unable to. That should put us at 30 entries. And there is that server reset. So, once again, another short delay, and we will be getting started with the qualifying session here very shortly. I apologize for the delays currently, but try to make sure that everybody can get into the session as easily as possible. And we do have that server reset. And we will give Xbox Series S users a short minute to get into the session, as there is a little bit of an error with those, I say lower end consoles, they are less strong consoles. They have some issues in getting everything right. They are a little bit more easily overwhelmed than the Series X in terms of graphics and things like that, so they do get a graphics card error if there are too many people into the session that they are trying to load at one time. And we will now get back into the session.
Green light. Go, go, go.
And we are back in once again. Merton now the taker. Actually, Bird way out there. Now, not sure which of the drivers. There are two drivers in this car tonight. The only driver swap car tonight, because they are doing a real-life driver swap. Father and son in that car. The son will be starting the race. And just waiting once more for everyone to get back into the session and us to get started once again. Got more than one of the CrowdStrike Lamborghini out here. And it seems to be, if you just cycle through the entries in this way, it goes by manufacturer. Hopping on with Good Gazelle. Almost have the full entry list back into the server. Still a good showing tonight. Right at 30 cars on track. Vasquez, very, very quick driver that we did not see set a time in the practice session. Finally made their way in. Would not be surprised to see Vasquez at the top of the timing boards at the end of the qualifying session here in about 20 minutes. Vasquez, very, very quick one to watch. Bird has some speed in that Lamborghini. Metrovkinen currently the car to beat, because I don't think anyone has set a time faster than Metrovkinen's 2:17.3 earlier on. Bush in the Aston Martin, also a driver with a lot of speed in that car. Also another top contender for the #1 spot, as he goes a little bit too wide, 2 tires off in the dirt at Lacombe, and does lose the rear of the car, keeps that car back on track, but those tires are going to be nice and hot and flat spotted. Not what you want if you're going to be setting some fast lap times here, and definitely not what you want if you're trying to nurse some tires for an hour or more. Strategy is going to be very, very crucial here. You would assume that everyone would segment their fuel into 3 different stops, 4 different segments, running less fuel than they would in a 2-hour 1-stop or a 2-hour 2-stop. But tires will be the big question. You take an extra 5 seconds in the pit lane, which in the grand scheme of the entire pit lane is really not too much, as it is a very, very long pit lane, as Heiderstadt is backwards at campus. But do you stay out on tires? I feel that weather will also be crucial, because if you come in and put some wet tires on for a short stint, that will take away one of your mandatory pit stops, but it may put you on a different strategy than what you would usually be used to, or what you were originally planning on. Again, we do not know what the weather's going to look like as we get further on into this race and even into the qualifying session. But the server is currently set up for spurts of rain. If the rain is to come, it is possible that the race stays dry the entire time. But any rain that we should see should be in small showers sprinkled all throughout the race. We do have a full day-night cycle, so we could have day in the rain, we could have night in the rain, we could have day in the dry, night in the rain, we could have day in the rain, night in the dry. Or if it's day in the rain and at night still wet, it may be a damp and greasy night, as that track would not dry up anywhere near as fast as it would right now with some sun on it. Just a couple minutes left before we get back into the qualifying session. Or back into the qualification before we get into the qualifying session. And Vasquez, currently the leader in this short practice session with a 2:18.7. Still no one touching that time of Metrovkinen, a 2:17.3, but the track is not fully developed right now. I'm not sure how developed it was previously, but there is still a lot more time to be had on this track as this track gets rubbered in more and more. Less than a minute left in this practice session. We got a lot of cars out on track. Darnell doing a practice pit stop here. Very, very crucial not to get that pit lane speeding penalty. You only want to come through this pit lane once when it's your pit cycle. You do not want to come through this pit lane twice. That is a lot of time to lose. Because as you can see here, as we watch Darnell go down through the pit lane, very, very slow, just a crawl on that pit limiter as Darnell does come to a stop and is going to return that car to the garage. But very, very slow, just creeping through the pit lane, and a long, long pit lane, the longest pit lane of any track that we have available here at Spa-Francorchamps. And as the time comes down to 0, we are now about to transition into our 15-minute qualifying session. And Bird coming into Lecumbe now. May be our final car in a valid lap. That would be the car that would send us over into our qualifying session. Bird currently P3, but no one going for push laps yet, and the track definitely not fully developed, but it does show rain in 2 hours. So the rain is definitely part of the forecast. We would not see any rain in this session here, or at least not for another 2 hours, but when we transition to the qualifying session, it is a mixed bag. Go ahead and pull that handle on the slot machine and see what it's going to be, because it's only a roll of the dice to see what the weather is going to be. The clouds have come in, and that rain actually went away in that 2 hours, or it may just be a small burst of rain, and now it says rain in half an hour. So that rain can jump on you very, very quickly as we see the rain get bumped up to rain in half an hour instead of rain in 2 hours. One question I have, and someone in chat may be able to answer me, is the rain calculated by in-game time or real time? Is that half an hour in-game time or half an hour in race time? I would believe it's half an hour in race time. And now we are in qualifying. The track is greasy, which means that the track is freshly damp. Who is going to be the first one out of the pit lane? I hear some cars starting up, but don't know who is our first taker. Car number 25. That seems to be Kane. Kane, our first taker in the McLaren 720S GT3. And the track is greasy. We see some spray coming off the rear tires of Kane there. And this is going to be a very, very interesting qualifying session here. As this track is greasy, there is a little bit of rain on it, a little bit of moisture on it. It is not raining and not supposed to rain for the duration of this session, but this will make qualifying very, very interesting. Everyone is more than likely out here on slicks, but Kane finding a loss of grip there at Bruxelles and returning that car back to the pit lane. Darnell almost at the front of the field, but Walker actually the first car out, but loses it at the exit of turn 13. Coming down to Pouan. Hopefully there's no damage on that car, but that may be a restart for Walker's qualifying session. I don't see any real damage on that car, but the curbs are showing to be treacherous currently, as Walker is going to pull that car over and take it back into the pit lane. Darnell will be the first driver out and the first driver to start a flying lap. Darnell brave enough to go out onto the curbs, that big old exit curb at Stavelot, not touching the exit curb at Paul Freire though. Now coming down towards Blanchimont, seems like that rain has gone away from the track. I don't see any more spray coming from the rear tires of that Porsche, and he seems to have some grip in that car coming through Blanchimont. The track does look a little bit shiny though. Hard on the brakes towards the bus stop, as Darnell will be the first one to cross the line to start a flying lap. It currently has a great big old window of open air ahead, and I don't think this track will develop too much. There are quite a few cars out here on track, as we are now actually at our 30 driver registration. Does seem to be a touch of sun poking through. That may help develop this track. As Darnell comes up Eau Rouge, making sure that this is a valid lap, and I believe still is on a valid lap. Actually is on an invalid lap, unless that is a glitch there with the valid and invalid coloration of the icons. Darnell coming through Lacombe now, as everyone out on track, or the majority of everyone, it seems to be Drain, the only car still in the pit lane. I think we may have Kelta and Gutgazelle also in the pit lane. Darnell wants to be the first one to set a flying lap, does have some traffic ahead that he is gaining on, but wants to set the time to beat. Needs to be very careful. If this is still a flying lap, this lap may be invalid and just be the setup for the next lap, but we will not know until he comes across the line. Darnell comes through campus, then eventually into Stavelot. Does seem to be wiggling a little bit there, and the Lamborghini of Douglas closing up the gap behind very, very much, and will be in the slipstream, getting a nice tow all the way down the back straight here. Coming out of Paul Freire curve, racing up the hill towards Blanchimont. As they come through Blanchimont, does seem to be dry enough. They do take a racy line through Blanchimont. Douglas is very close behind Darnell. Darnell misses the apex slightly at the bus stop, has to panic and overcorrect, and that will compromise the exit, losing a lot of time at the end of the lap. We'll see if that lap was valid though, and it was. 2:26 for Douglas and a 2:26.0 for Douglas, 2:26.2 for Darnell. Puts Darnell down in P2. Douglas on provisional pole, as the sun is now poking out at La Source. Hoping to see some more sun throughout the rest of the track. We do have some shadows cast down the straight heading down into Eau Rouge, and it seems like this track may develop a lot quicker than we think, as the sun is poking through, and we may be getting some dry track. Busch now up into provisional pole at 2:24.8. The lap time's nowhere near optimal, but everyone is on an even playing field, and we will see who will prevail. Busch currently P1, Metrovkin in P2, a 10th.5 behind, and then a second from P2 to P3. Setting a fast lap is a challenge here, but setting a valid lap is mandatory. That is a need, a necessity, as setting that valid lap will at least put you above anyone who does not set a valid lap. And being Spa a challenging track, especially in these tricky conditions, there will be some drivers who do not set a valid lap, either pushing too hard or just the adverse conditions proposing a little bit too much of a challenge. As we are coming through Brousseau with Busch, your current pole sitter. Number 713 of Wilson about to come across the line in that, I would say, oriental liveried Porsche. Does go wide at Blanchimont, and I think that may have invalidated the lap. I would be surprised if this is a valid lap. It does go wide at the bus stop, and that will invalidate the lap, and abandons the bus stop, goes to get a good exit and start another lap. Number 420 of Darnell, 1.3 seconds off the pace, will be next across the line, is in a little gaggle of Lamborghinis, though. Two CrowdStrike Lamborghinis with one Porsche in the middle. And Darnell improves up into P1 with a 2:23.1. The track does definitely seem to be developing. A lot more sun showing through as this track is drying off and developing quickly, as there is a lot of sun showing through, and it may get very, very close. The further we get into this qualifying session, I believe we may have a last lap shootout, as little pockets of moisture on track you can see are drying up, and there's just some slight puddles through here. Darnell pulling onto the rear of that Lamborghini ahead of Norman and pulls up, but Busch coming across the line retakes provisional pole by just 0.06 of a second, but still Busch on pole, showing that he is definitely a force to be reckoned with, finding a lot of pace in that Aston Martin GT3. But the track is improving, the track conditions are improving, and I would be very, very surprised if we do not see these lap times fall as this session goes on. Vasquez, another one to watch. Currently 3 seconds off the pace. Maybe just not getting the luck that he needs, getting the right track space, the right opening on track to get that lap put in, but does seem to be in a good spot now. Coming through Lecumbe with the car behind, I would be very much expecting. I would put my money on Vasquez improving up into the top 5 here very shortly as traffic moves out of the way. The Dark Horse Mustang of Heiderstadt. Vasquez now has open track to try and improve. Bird goes 0.08 of a second off of the pole position lap of Busch. Very, very tight, less than 1/10 of a second between P1 and P3, less than 0.2 of a second between P1 and P4. Very, very tight dealings in qualifying right now. And once again, this track is developing, so it's on to those drivers who need a good lap to improve, but also the drivers that have already set a lap. The track is developing, it is getting better and better for them, but as this track gets more and more busy, as we see Darnell, the P2 car just needs 0.06 of a second, but a lot of traffic in front and behind. Definitely going to take some time out of the lap to try and negotiate that traffic. Just a part of qualifying. The track has improved to green. We are no longer considered greasy as Johnston backs out and allows Darnell past. Darnell does have some open air ahead and pretty quick cars ahead. Should not be too worried about traffic. Shortly may get another clean lap in. And Busch drops the time down by 2 seconds as this track is rapidly improving. 2:21.0, 2:21.005 is Busch's lap time. That is the time to beat, and very much improving those track conditions as Busch is looking to buy more and more insurance. Does have a lot of clean air ahead. This is probably Busch's best opportunity for a absolute flyer of a lap here if he does not catch that traffic ahead too quickly. Petrovkinin now up into P1 with a 2:20.4. I've said it and I'll say it again, very, very rapidly improving track. As the seconds are now falling off of these times, we should be inching ever so much closer to those 2:19s and 2:18s by the end of this session. Petrovkinin will have this lap and one more. as long as they do not have any traffic to deal with and a lot of open air. The next car is all the way down at the other end of the Kimmel Straight, but Metrovkin pulls the car to the side and either maybe getting the car another setup for a one-shot, one more time qualifying lap, or could be the end of the session. Could be the end of the session for Metrovkin. Could just be getting that car set back up with a fresh set of tires and low fuel setup to go out and put another lap in. Car number 998, the one to watch, but still sitting in the pit box. Busch, with a lot of room to breathe ahead, will have this lap and one more if he can get to the line in time with no traffic. I don't think that Busch would have any problem doing so, but it will be very, very tight. Just 20 seconds, the buffer between now and the line. It will be very close, but Busch will have just a couple seconds left to spare in order to set another flying lap. 6, 5, 4. Busch will have anywhere from 4 to 6 seconds left to get to get back to the start-finish line, as his margins are very tight, and he will be the last car with 2 laps left. Busch has this lap and one more if he chooses to do so, and Busch does not settle for anything less than P1. Busch would usually pull into the pit lane and be done with the lap by now if he was in P1, but is not in P1 and will continue to push. Metrovkin back out on track, but is in a little bit of traffic. Does have a lap to get around and try to get past this traffic, and there is a small room of space ahead of the car, the Aston Martin of Atwell, and the number 424 car of as I seem to have lost my controls here. Hold on one second. As Metrovkin desperately trying to get that, or get those tires warmed up, will not be able to get past the traffic ahead by the time we get to the end of this session. Sorry about that, a little bit of technical difficulty, but we are now in control once again. Metrovkin, with 1 lap left to go, does have some traffic ahead. We'll hope that he can use that traffic for a little bit of slipstream, and that may have been in the strategy. As Harvey now eclipses Busch, and we'll have 1 more lap left to go. Very, very tight dealings for Harvey. We'll have this lap being the final lap. Busch up into P1 with a 2:19.3, 1 second ahead of Metrovkin. Metrovkin desperately trying to get past this traffic and set that faster lap as the traffic bows out ahead. Metrovkin in P2, Busch setting the pace by over 1 second gap between him and Metrovkin, and it is going to be a last lap shootout, just as I predicted here in qualifying for the Spa 2.4 hour of the TRC Summer SRO Series. Metrovkin showed the pace in the practice session and has a little bit of traffic to deal with ahead, but does not seem to be at too much risk of losing time to that traffic ahead. Bird up into P2, 3/4 of a second off of Busch, but is on the second row currently. Busch on provisional pole, Bird P2 currently. Metrovkin trying desperately to improve on their lap time and may be in prime position to use Atwell for some slipstream all the way down the backstretch headed up the hill towards Blanchimont. It is Metrovkin's lap to take here as Vasquez now comes across the line, P2. Harvey down to P5. Metrovkin trying desperately to improve on this lap and is still pushing all over the rear bumper of Atwell, and it may get close here as Metrovkinen will be all in the slipstream of Atwell as they come up the back straight and through Blanchimont. It will be hard on the brakes. Does Metrovkinen try to go for a move on Atwell? Metrovkinen needs Atwell to get a move on or get out of the way, and Atwell bows out of the lap. It is all on Metrovkinen here. A little bit of the sausage curb at the exit of the bus stop, but what will it be for Metrovkinen? Is it enough for P1? It is P2 by less than 0.05 of a second, and a little bit of frustration from Metrovkinen there, putting the car into the wall. But very, very close, the fight for pole position. Car number 99, the final car to come across. Wagner finds himself in P10. As they stand, Busch, your pole sitter, with a 2:19.3. Metrovkinen P2 with a 2:19.432. Vasquez P3 with a 2:19.5. And Harrell P4 with a 2:19.7. That is your top four, your front two rows, all within half a second, less than half a second. Bird P5, Mott P6, Harvey P7, Darnell P8, Rodriguez P9, Wagner P10, Wilson P11, Douglas P12, Harris P13, Heiderstop P14, Merkel P15, Drain P16, Gonzalez P17, Walker P18, Norman P19, DeHaro P20, Atwell P21, Winter P22, Gutgazelle P23, Perot P24, Miller P25, Johnston P26, Cook P27, Dane P28, Mertson P29, and Kelta P30. That is the order. That's how they'll start. But no one knows how they will finish. Busch, your pole sitter here in the TRC Summer SRO Series Spa 2.4 hour. And we are just waiting for the session to kick over, and we will get started with the formation lap. Very, very large diversity of cars here. And we will have a 3-stop race tonight. Again, a 3-stop race. 3 pit stops, 25 seconds each. And each stop will require fuel, but does not require tires. And as we will go on board with our pole sitter, Busch definitely showing the pace in this qualifying session. Busch, no stranger to the pole. As I said earlier, no stranger to P1. As I hope that that is not taken out of context at all. But knowing TRC, things are very easily taken out of context. Busch P1 with Metrovkinen in P2, less than 0.05 of a second between them. 42 thousandths, if you will, between those two cars. Probably close to the distance between them here. It would be less than a car length. And as we are starting in the early evening, we will very quickly transition into the night. And we will likely be taking our first pit stops in the early night, late evening hours. I have heard that it does get dark very quickly here at Spa. And we will figure out what the weather forecast is showing very shortly. I did not look at the weather forecast before I jumped into the onboard. But as we look down the field, definitely a long line of cars. I think we may have someone starting in the pit lane or may have had a disconnection. I think we may have had a disconnection. But a long line of cars. 15 cars on each side, totaling 230 cars in the session. And here in about 2 minutes, we will be started with our formation lap. About a minute and a half now. And I would take this time to please ask, if you are not following, I would greatly appreciate it if you wouldn't mind hitting that follow button. And if you would like to subscribe and support the streams, I would greatly appreciate that as well. We got our entry that we lost back, but they may be starting in the pit lane. Don't see it, actually, no, it shows them at the back of the grid, so they should assume their normal grid position once the formation lap gets started, or they may be starting at the back of the grid. And as we go back on board with our pulse hitter. As in 30 seconds, Busch, once given the command, will hit that ignition, lay a finger on that starter, and we will be engines fired and rolling for the formation lap here in the Spa 2.4 hour, which is not technically a 2.4 hour, it is closer to a 2 hour, because it is a 2 hour and 4 minute race instead of a 2 hour and 24 minute race. There was some confusion about that earlier in the Discord, as we are now engines fired, at least from the cars behind. Busch should have us engines fired here very shortly. Doing some final adjustments to the setup, making sure that everything is correct. You've got enough fuel in it, you've got the right tire pressures, you've got the right tires on the car. Busch not starting this car until it is the absolute last moment to save as much fuel as possible. And drop the clutch, smoke the tires, and we are off rolling as Busch leads us off the line to start our formation lap here in the Spa 2.4 hour. And as the field comes off the line and comes up through Eau Rouge, eventually into Raidillon, we will start to see the breadth of the field. And we will take a look at a few of these liveries as well. Walker rocking the McDonald's BMW WRT car. Miller in that Bagel Run Ferrari 296. Rodriguez in a Dark Horse Mustang with that Dark Horse livery. Gonzalez also in the Dark Horse livery. Heiderstadt also in the Dark Horse livery. And Harrell in that American flag themed livery there. Perot also in the Dark Horse livery. Merkel in the American flag livery. Kane in this silver and red McLaren 720S GT3. Harvey in the Sun Energy Racing, very iconic livery, very strong team at the Bathurst 12 hour every year. Very good looking livery on that car. Johnston with a very good looking Mercedes AMG GT3. Bird, which that is not Mark Bird, that is Oliver. That is the son of Oliver in that Lamborghini. Now they are doing a real life driver swap, so hopefully no drama for them in doing so. Birdson in the Mountain Wolf livery in that Mercedes or Lamborghini Huracan. Cook in the Iron Lynx livery. I believe that's Iron Lynx. Have to wait until we can see the side. That is Iron Lynx. Douglas in the crowd strike, Norman in the crowd strike, DeHaro in what looks to be a custom livery. It didn't follow the rules, DeHaro, but it is all okay. Darnell in the very big shoes to fill Grello Manti livery. Petrovkinin in P2 in that black and neon green livery. Almost Grello, but not quite. Wilson in that Chinese red and gold livery. Winter in the, I want to say Herbert Motorsport. That is the Herbert Motorsport black and gold, like the old John Player Special Lotus cars. Atwell in the white and red. Kelta in the Beechstein Ice Cream black and yellow. The over-under on T1 Carnage, there's Gutgazelle in the Aston Martin Racing colors. Mott in the Heart of Racing Aston Martin. Wagner in the Bullet Aston Martin, similar to that of our pole sitter of Busch. I would take the over on... actually, on turn 1, I would take the under. But lap 1, that's where I would take the over. And as we get the 2x2 call, we do not take the start-finish line here. We do not take the green flag at the official start-finish line here at the pit straight before La Source. We take it down the hill, headed into Eau Rouge. It will be very, very crucial for everyone to keep it nice and tidy and play nice as we get ready to get started here in the Spa 2.4 hour. Busch at the front of the field to take the green flag, practice that he is no stranger to. And as we come down the hill, we inch closer and closer to green flag. And as we roll down the hill and the cars assume speed, Busch sets the pace. As we get closer and closer to the gantry, green flag any second. Green, green, green. We are racing here in the Spa 2.4 hour. Busch and Petrovkinin. Petrovkinin takes the lead early in a very brave move as the rest of the field tries their best to cycle through up Eau Rouge. Everyone seems to be making it through nicely. Petrovkinin now up into the lead. Busch, Vasquez, Harrell all on a line. Petrovkinin goes defensive, heading down the Kimmel Straight towards Lacombe. Car number 67 of Harris. We've got a car around at Eau Rouge. Just one car dropped off the back of the field, but as they come through Lacombe, is it chaos? Do not see any contact yet. No yellow flags thrown. And everyone seems to have made it through nicely. Petrovkinin, still your leader, ahead of Busch, but Busch is all over the rear bumper of that Porsche 992 GT3R. And the battle of the greats has begun. We are not showing any rain in the session yet, but that does not mean that there is rain lurking in that time. And Petrovkinin leading the field as they come through campus. Just nice and tidy. Allow those nerves to calm down. This is the big one. This is what you've been training for all week. This is the big one of the series. And now it is time to just settle in to your racing line and just find your rhythm, find your pattern throughout the rest of the field. Everyone is finding their pace, finding their space. Miller and Kelta in a little bit of a scrap here. Miller goes wide at Paul Freire curve. And now too wide between Miller and Kelta as they head up the hill towards Blanchimont. Kelta does assume the lead of that battle as they head into Blanchimont. Petrovkinin still the leader coming out of the bus stop, with Busch, Vasquez, Harrell, Bird, a slight breakaway this top 5 from the rest of the field, as Mott and Darnell trying desperately to hold on to that slipstream, do not want to get lost from that field. Mock goes deep at La Source. We may have a battle on our hands heading down the hill towards Eau Rouge. side by side, Mott and Darnell to start the second lap. Darnell backs out, allows Mott the space to go through safely up Eau Rouge. No reason to risk your race like that just yet. And now a slight gap developed between Bird and Mott. Cars behind Harvey and Wagner. Wagner going aggressive on Harvey into Lecombe. Wagner looks to have that position. Harvey has to concede. And Wagner moves ahead one spot. And Douglas, finding himself onto the back of this pack, may be in an opportune position to move through and take another few positions here. As Douglas all over the rear bumper of Harvey. All of these drivers trying to get these tires warmed up, and the conditions have changed. We did have partly cloudy for the entire session. Now we are looking at clouds. The track will be cooling, and we will be heading closer and closer towards nighttime. The track will cool off quite a bit. And we have almost burnt these 4 minutes off, almost trimmed the fat, and we will have a 2-hour race to take us to the end here. And 3, 2, 1, and 2 hours left to go. As the battle in the lead still rages on. Trovkanen finding early pace in that Porsche. Busch and the Aston Martin not letting him get away, and a small gap growing between Busch, Vasquez, and Harrell. Vasquez very deep into the bus stop, all over the rear bumper of Busch. Maybe a fight for P2 here very shortly. Your top three trying to break away from the rest of the field. Harrell not allowing that to happen. But a small gap growing between Bird and Harrell. And now Bird outside of the slipstream range will not be pulled along in that draft train as your top four are breaking away. Mott and Darnell still doing battle here as Darnell all over the rear of Mott may try to use that slipstream and close this gap towards Lecombe. Darnell all over the rear of Mott. Does Darnell have enough room to pull to the inside? It would have to be a late lunge. Thinks better of it, backs out, and allows Mott to assume the position ahead. A little bit further behind, Heiderstadt, Rodriguez, and Winter. Heiderstadt and Rodriguez sister cars here, but they are fighting in the AM Championship. Heiderstadt and Rodriguez all over each other here. Two Mustangs fighting for P10 overall. Car number 424 has had an off its Mertzen. Heavy damage on the front of that Lamborghini, and that will be an early stop for Mertzen, I believe. Some understeer through Bruxelles, and that may be an early unscheduled pit stop. Trovkanen still in the lead. Busch all over the rear bumper, though. The gap had grown for a second, now has shrunk back down as Busch has found some pace in that Aston Martin. Less than half a second behind Trovkanen, fully in the slipstream. Vasquez now out of the slipstream of the top two. Harrell now all over the rear bumper of the BMW of Vasquez, exercising the top speed, the monstrous top speed of that Mustang Dark Horse GT3. Hard on the brakes for the Mustang, hard on the brakes for the BMW, as Harrell tries to close that gap as much as he can while slowing down. Battle for the lead still raging, the battle for P3 still raging, but Vasquez trying desperately to hold on, get just a finger around the rope of slipstream that is ahead, because that is just a tow rope that will pull you along. But if you lose that tow rope, you will be desperately losing speed as the top two or whatever cars ahead of you that do have slipstream will begin to pull away. Car number 65 of Daharo, very early, it looked like very early into the pits, but very, very slow. Maybe some damage, maybe just a little bit of an incident at the bus stop, dropping down in positions. Winter all over the battling Ford Mustangs of Rodriguez and Heiderstadt, hoping for a mistake from either one to move forward. Car number 185 of Gonzalez, very, very big damage, and we'll have to walk that car, or I guess limp that car back to the pit lane, and that is a rapid, unscheduled disassembly there from the Mustang. It did not do it itself, but very, very big damage on that Mustang GT3. Very unfortunate for Gonzalez this early in the race. Busch still all over the rear bumper of Metrovkinen, and now almost 2 seconds between Vasquez and Busch. Harrell all over the rear bumper of that BMW of Vasquez. Kelta and Gutgazelle, two Aston Martin sister cars, battling through campus, and Miller behind looking to take advantage. Douglas and Johnston also looking to do battle behind. Douglas with some damage on the front of that Lamborghini. Douglas, a very, very quick driver, usually not this far down the order. I think may have been involved in an incident and is trying desperately to make their way back up towards the front. Pulling to the inside of Johnston is going to be a brave move into Blanchimont, but does get past. I think Johnston may have an issue with that car pulling out of the racing line. Not sure what is wrong with that car, but some issues for Johnston. I think maybe limping that car to the pit lane brings it to a stop and allows the field to cycle through. Busch with the fastest lap, still just following behind Metrovkinin. Now, over 2 seconds between the leading duo and the fight for the podium, as Vasquez is trying desperately to make some no man's land here and get away from that Mustang behind. Harvey leading a small gaggle of cars here all the way from P9 to P13, it looks like. Drain in a little bit of no man's land just behind Rodriguez, actually the last car in this battle. Winter has sliced his way through the first of that Mustang battle, now has the second, and is looking to make their way past and eventually work onto the Mercedes AMG GT3 of Harvey. Metrovkinen still trying to grow that gap, but cannot shake Busch. Busch still all over the rear bumper of that Porsche. Harrell. Vasquez unable to drop that Mustang. Bird now in no man's land, just able to cruise, and this is the place you want to be. This is where pit strategy can gain you a lot of time. If you wanted to go for an undercut or an overcut on the cars ahead, you now have the breathing room to do so. Car number 555 of Mott with Wagner and Darnell behind. Wagner ended up making their way past Darnell, as it was Mott and Wagner fighting together for a short period of time. Now Wagner has wedged into this battle, and Darnell trying desperately to get back onto the rear of that fight. Harvey still ahead, breaking away slightly, and Winter may have the move into Lost Source. Tries it around the outside, may set up the undercut, or the old switcheroo at Lost Source. Does not get it done, but is fully in the slipstream of Heiderstadt. Will be in the dirty air as they come up Eau Rouge and eventually into Radion. And Winter just trying to follow through. Will be fully into the slipstream of those Mustangs, but they are very, very quick, very hard to catch even when you're in the slipstream. And I don't think that Porsche would have enough juice to keep up with that Mustang, even fully in the slipstream. But That Porsche will have the advantage through the turns, as Winter will try to use that car to its best of its abilities. Norman and Perot, a little bit of gap between them. Good Gazelle now behind Kelta, as Kelta has broken away. Miller was not able to take advantage of both of those drivers. Car number 185, Gonzalez, extremely unfortunate, gets a drive-through penalty for speeding in pit lane and brings that car back to the pits, and I believe may be putting that car on the trailer tonight, as they are back in the pit lane. Matrovkinen now breaking away slightly from Busch. I think Matrovkinen may be away from Busch enough where Busch is no longer getting that slipstream assistance. Vasquez dropping very far behind the leading duo, and Harrell still barely inside that slipstream range behind Vasquez. Bird still in no man's land. Mott, Wagner, and Darnell having a three-man battle here, as these three cars trying to figure out who belongs ahead of the other. Car number 67 of Harris with some damage on that car, some yellow flags thrown. Douglas as well, I think more damage on that car than we saw previously. Atwell also some damage on that car. Johnston, we did see pull over earlier. I don't know if maybe there was some respect for causing an incident or something like that. And Mertson still with the damage on that Lamborghini, bringing up the rear of the field. Matrovkin is still your leader, and that gap to Busch behind is growing. Maybe Busch has backed off and decided to save the tires, live to race another day. And we are now showing a little bit of sun poking through, as I don't think these track conditions and that forecast in the top right-hand side of the screen is to be 100% trusted. Vasquez with Harrell all over the rear bumper now. This could be a change of position for the podium, as Vasquez trying desperately to pull away from this Mustang of Harrell. Bird still in no man's land, all on their own. And the trio fight of Wagner, Darnell, and Mott. Mott now finds himself at the back of this fight, still in the slipstream, still within a shout of the battle, as Darnell is trying desperately to get with or get past Wagner. They may be working together to try and move forward ahead on the track. Harvey broken away from the group slightly. Winter still trying to get past the Mustang of Heiderstadt, but unable to find the pace in that car to do so yet. Harvey goes very wide at campus, at the exit of campus that is. And the P3 fight is coming to a climax here, as Harrell goes in the inside of Mott, or not of Mott, of Vasquez, forces Vasquez to brake very, very deep, but Vasquez does have the inside as they come to the exit of the bus stop. And I think Vasquez will have the advantage as they run up the hill towards La Source. Harrell is on the inside, but Vasquez has the attempt at the old switcheroo, forcing Harrell to brake at the suboptimum time, and Vasquez may try the cutback. Does not get the cutback, but does go around the outside, and now it's the drag race down the hill towards Eau Rouge. Harrell tucks in behind, lives the fight another day, and will have the superior top speed of that Mustang as they head down the Kimmel Straight, as Harrell will have another chance into the braking zone of Lecum, as they are rushing down the back straight. Harrell eyes the move, forces Vasquez defensive, and Harrell unable to take that position yet. Busch still trying to get this position away from Matrovkin, and the battle has raged for 20 minutes so far. And Busch all over the rear of that Porsche, but unable to find the gap to get past. It will have to be a mistake from either driver that would seal the deal in terms of the position. Norman with Wilson just behind now. as Wilson, with some pace in that Porsche, is looking to move forward in positions, looking to try and find a way onto the podium in the AM series. Vasquez lives to fight another day ahead of Harrell. Harrell unable to get past the BMW of Vasquez. We've got a fight here between Perot and Kelta. A fight in the AM series between Perot and Kelta. Quite the gap to Wilson up ahead, but that would be the next car in this battle. And car number 109 of Heiderstadt around at campus. Unsure what happened there. Damage on the front of that car may have been some contact, may have just been a mistake of their own. But that does open up some positions to the cars behind, as aerodynamic damage is very, very bad here at Spa with these long straights. Petrovkinen still ahead of Busch, trying to open that gap more, and that gap is opening up more, and that leading pair just growing the gap between Vasquez and Busch. Vasquez still under pressure from the Mustang of Harrell behind, as we are nearing our first scheduled pit stops. It is up to the drivers completely on when they take those pit stops, but they do need to take 3. So if you split 124 minutes into 3 pieces, you would have about 41 minutes apiece. So anywhere in the next 20 to 30 minutes, we should be expecting our first pit stops, or maybe some alternate strategies. Petrovkinen has opened the gap slightly, and Petrovkinen has retaken the fastest lap of the race. Vasquez and Harrell still in the fight. Winter, as Winter was in that battle with Heiderstadt, but Heiderstadt did make that mistake. Now Winter onto the back of Harvey. Wagner and Darnell still in battle here. As the lights are on, the sun is going down, and we are getting closer and closer to the night here in the Spa 2.4 hour. Douglas, I thought Douglas had some damage on that car, has repaired the damage, has taken a pit stop, and is our first pit stop taker of the night. Mertson with damage on that Lamborghini, not taking a pit stop yet. Douglas is fully in traffic and is now on an alternate strategy. Does not mean that his race is over, just is the only car to take a pit stop. Did have to repair some damage. Vasquez and Harrell still fighting ahead. Car number 111 of Winter, extremely unfortunate, getting a drive-through penalty for track limits. Very easy to do here at Spa. And you can blame that one on Rowan for saying that you were doing a really good job tonight. Extremely unfortunate for Winter getting that drive-through penalty that will have to be served outside of the scheduled pit stops. And it is the most painful drive-through penalty of the entire race calendar. The race is not over for Winter, as it is not over until the checkered flag flies. Car number 12 of Norman around at La Source and tries to get that car backed up, and now back onto the racing surface without hindering those cars passing ahead. But our first track limit penalty of the night, or of the day I should say, of the race. Vasquez and Harrell still in battle. Busch and Petrovkinen still in battle. Petrovkinen is pulling away, or was pulling away from Busch. The timing boards have not updated, but Busch has closed that gap up a lot, as about or over 20 minutes, as we get closer to 25 minutes, we start to reach the fall off range in terms of tires, where you start to see the times drop down. Timing boards update, that battle is a lot closer than we expected. Same between Harrell and Vasquez. Bird still on their own. And Miller coming in for a pit stop. A scheduled pit stop, I believe. And as long as they do not have any speeding penalties or anything like that, should be a clean stop for Miller. Vasquez and Harrell still fighting up the hill into La Source. A large group of cars here. Merkel, DeHaro, Walker. As we have what looked to be a car around, or just some big sparks being thrown up. I think it was sparks from Gutgazelle ahead. Gutgazelle and Merkel in battle here, as now Darnell takes to the pit lane. Merkel, or not Merkel, Winter serving that drive-through penalty. And that will be time added on top of the scheduled pit stops that must be made. Darnell going for an undercut on Wagner, I believe. Once again, a large group of cars. Wagner, DeHaro, Cook, Norman, Harris. A bunch of cars here in one spot. Gutgazelle leading them all. And a very large group of cars heading down the hill into Eau Rouge. Big sparks being thrown by that Aston Martin GT3. Thank you for the followers. Thank you for following. We are back at 200 again, and behind they are battling for position, DeHaro and Cook. Cook was eyeing the move on the inside of DeHaro down into the Lecumbe braking zone, but backed out of that move, figured it was not time for it yet. A large group of cars trying to find their way through. Kane and Atwell also coming into the pit lane. We are starting our scheduled pit stops. The leaders have not pit yet. Darnell comes out of the pits, and it's clean, no speeding penalty. And now Darnell is on a different strategy than the rest of the field. Very crucial here to just put your head down, press forward, as you will be on your own in the dead of night, as there is no one around Darnell. We'll be coming up on some traffic shortly, but this is the hardest part of the race. No one to gauge yourself off of, no one to measure your pace off of, as Darnell makes a mistake, backs out of the Lecumbe chicane. And with those cold tires and a little bit different strategy here, we'll just have to put their head down and push on forward. Vasquez comes into the pit lane looking for an undercut on Harrell, as Harrell stays out. Vasquez, one of the first leaders to come into the pit lane. And Gutgazelle still leading that large group of cars. Gutgazelle, Merkel, Walker, DeHaro, Cook, Norman, Harris. 6 cars here, 7 cars here, all in one frame essentially, and Gutgazelle leading them all. Trovkin is still your leader. The gap to Busch has grown over a second now, and Harrell 8.2 seconds behind, all on their own. Bird 6.7 seconds behind, but Wagner is closing that gap. Bird is the silver leader tonight, the Pro-Am car tonight. And that is the son in the car. That is not the main driver. The main driver, Mark Bird, is going to be getting into the car whenever they take their pit stop. They are doing a real-life driver swap. The son, Oliver, is in the car driving now. Busch has now closed that gap of Metrovkinen one more time. And just waiting for these leaders to come into the pit lane. As I believe Busch dives off and goes for the undercut. Gets that car slowed down and onto the pit limiter. And Busch now deviates from Metrovkinen. Metrovkinen now left all alone at the front of the field to push on their own that glowing red exhaust from that Porsche 992 GT3R. Vasquez back out on track. Down the order, but is the leader on strategy currently. If he can get around back to the front of the field by the time the leading cars ahead come out of the pit lane. They should come out as long as their stops and everything were similar and they all took tires and fuel and did all their appropriate arrangements. They should have a similar gap, but precision in pit lane, in braking as late as possible, getting that car slowed down as late as possible into the braking zone at the pit stop, and also getting that car shut off as fast as possible and getting the car started back up and out of the pit lane as fast as possible, all can lose or gain time. And Vasquez, looking to gain some of that time, was around 6 seconds behind the leaders when he came into the pits. Busch and Harrell still not rolling out of the pit lane, as Vasquez just coming through Blanchimont. This is the race for the provisional lead right now. This would be the leader on strategy. Busch and Harrell have still not begun rolling, and Busch off the jacks, now on the throttle, is rolling. Busch may be the leader on strategy as Vasquez is coming down the hill into La Source. We should see him enter the frame any second now. But Busch out on track ahead of Vasquez, and I think Busch has gotten the advantage in that fight there. But has Vasquez got the undercut on Harrell? He has. Vasquez passed Harrell, but the gap has not changed very much. Vasquez needs to try and run away as fast as possible, is on the fresher, or I say fresher, on the warmer tires. Cook and Walker also coming into the pit lane. Douglas still parked, I think, repairing damage on that car. As we get our first cycle of pit stops here. Wagner now rolling into the pit lane. Metrovkinen in the pit lane ahead, your leader. But has Metrovkinen lost or gained any time by not taking that stop at the same time Busch did? Busch was behind, was able to catch out Metrovkinen in terms of the pit strategy, as Metrovkinen, it was too late to react. Bird will assume the lead for a short amount of time, I believe. Or Bird may come into the pits here in a second. Mott and Cook with the pit cycle behind of Kane and Miller. And now this is where the field gets all jumbled up, as Bird is now scored as the leader, has not pit yet, but is currently scored as the leader. Rodriguez in the pit lane, Drain in the pit lane. Everyone is coming in now. Perot, Norman, Gutgazelle, Harris. That entire gaggle of cars that was running together, or at least most of it, all coming into the pit lane now, as we have a large chunk of the field rolling down the pit lane. Metrovkinen now off the jacks and rolling, will come out of the pit lane very much ahead of Busch, but how much will that gap shrink as Busch comes up the hill? Busch is going to be on the warmer tires, and Metrovkinen is ahead. Busch has more speed, but as they come down into the braking zone of Lecumbe, the field will be equalized, as they will both be at the same speed. But how much has Busch gained? How much has Busch lost? Busch 2 seconds behind Metrovkinen, That was a little larger than the gap was before the pit cycle. And Metrovkinen wins out on strategy there as long as he can get those tires warmed up in that car. Bird, your leader for now, but does come into the pit lane hard on the brakes. Hope that wasn't too fast for Bird. Does not need a speeding penalty here. Mott maybe scored the leader. Mott coming into the pit lane. Wilson would be scored the leader next if Wilson does not come into the pit lane, but would not be surprised if they do come into the pit lane. Metrovkinen, your theoretical leader, your leader on strategy in P8 currently, but not much in terms of cars ahead. Busch all over the rear of this Porsche. The story continues just in the next chapter, as Vasquez has now broken away from Harrell slightly, 2.5 seconds. There was a strategy undercut there. Now I would like to just remind everybody watching at home, just stay hydrated. If you're a driver listening to the streams, make sure that you stay hydrated. Drink that water during your pit stop, as I do now. Bird into the pit lane, Mott into the pit lane, Heiderstadt into the pit lane, Merkel into the pit lane. Wilson stays out, and Wilson is going to be scored your leader for now, with Kelta just behind. Wilson and Kelta your top two, but not in terms of strategy. As the theoretical leaders are still Metrovkinen and Busch. As Metrovkinen has opened up a slight gap to Busch behind, but I think Busch may still be in that slipstream. And Vasquez has now definitely opened a gap to Harrell behind. Wagner still ahead of Darnell by quite the large margin, that is. Harvey now on their own. Drain now on their own. Rodriguez on their own. Perot on their own. The pit stops have definitely spread out the field for the most part. Kane and Miller very close together. Walker now in the pit lane, but still stopped in the pit lane. Don't know if maybe there's an issue with that car or repairing some damage. But Walker, a very, very long pit stop. That car could be parked, and being put on the trailer could be a mechanical issue. Wilson and Kelta, technically a fight for the lead, although it's not really the lead as they both still need to make a pit stop. But Wilson and Kelta fighting for P1 as Wilson goes around the outside, or Kelta goes around the outside of Wilson. Wilson just allowed Kelta the pass. There may have been an agreement earlier on as Wilson dives into the pit lane, and Kelta will be scored the leader as Kelta will lead a lap here. DeHaro now will be scored P2 if DeHaro does not come into the pit lane, and Metrovkinen, your true leader, just behind, will now come past DeHaro. Flash of the lights from Metrovkinen. DeHaro does have a right to race here, but will ultimately back out of the fight, and DeHaro will pull into the pit lane. Kelta still scored as your leader, with Johnston up ahead. Wilson and DeHaro come into the pit lane, and Kelta is now the last man out on track to not take their pit stop, will be the final taker. How will this affect the pit strategy? Maybe wanting some shorter stops later on. Go long on one, go short on two, but with as long as the pit stops here are, is that going to be the correct strategy? Metrovkinen back up into P3 overall, still your overall leader. Winter, after serving the drive-through penalty, is in P22 overall, trying to fight his way back up into the field after that unfortunate drive-through penalty. Walker now back out on track, maybe had some damage on that car to repair. Heiderstadt comes out of the pit as well. Actually, I think Walker may be going on a very different strategy. One stop left, they took a second pit stop there, as Walker may try to get these pit stops out of the way early and get this car set up to go long very early, as we are now a quarter of the way through this race, just a little bit less than an hour and a half left. And I would say, Oliver, you did great in that Lamborghini. Hopping on with Bird, Dad is now in the car, as Dad is going to be under attack from Darnell shortly, I believe. Mott with some traffic around. Kelta now diving into the pit lane. I hope that that wasn't a speeding penalty there. It looked like it was very late on the brakes from Kelta, but it could have just been perfect, as Metrovkinen looks to maybe retake the lead here, or should retake the lead here with Kelta in the pit lane. Busch now following about half a second behind. Did have to negotiate some traffic there, but the traffic did cooperate of Walker and bowed out of the lead battle, and Metrovkinen will retake the lead, will be rescored as the leader. Vasquez still running on their own in P3 overall. And Wagner now coming across the line. Bird and Darnell. Looks to be a battle brewing. Back with Gutgazelle. Gutgazelle, Harris, and Winter here in battle. Winter has gained a spot ahead of Daharo, who came into the pits, I believe. Winter onto the very back of this fight, with Harris and Gutgazelle, the sister Aston Martins, battling ahead. And Johnston and Norman here in battle very shortly. Hopping back on with this battle with Winter, Gutgazelle, and Harris. Winter trying to find a way past this, or these battling Aston Martins, but just nowhere to go. Has the pace, but does not have the room, as Gutgazelle goes wide at curb of Paul Friere. Harris now may have a run heading up to Blanchimont, and Winter has found a slight gap to gain some slipstream speed. Harris and Gutgazelle side by side. It's looking as they come into the bus stop. Does Harris throw the move? Harris does not. We'll just follow suit behind Gutgazelle. Winter needs these cars ahead to get a move on, as he is trying to regain some positions. Harris and Gutgazelle still in battle here behind Daharo and Atwell. And then Johnston and Norman. Johnston still ahead of Norman there. Vasquez making their way past the McDonald's WRT BMW of Walker. Walker is on that different pit strategy, has taken 2 stops, and I believe may be trying to go long as we get later into this race. Still the threat of weather, as we have had changing conditions, as we have not come across any rain yet, but we have gone partly cloudy to sunny, or to clear skies, that is. There's no sun at night. They turn the sun off, take it somewhere else, then bring it back out during the day. Metrovkinen and Busch still fighting for the lead. Vasquez in no man's land, Harrell in no man's land, Wagner in no man's land, Darnell in no man's land. But as we come back here, Bird technically in no man's land. Mott just a few car lengths behind, not a direct threat just yet. Harris now past Gutgazelle, as Winter is now also trying to get past Gutgazelle. As we are inching closer and closer towards sunrise, we may see this track open up a little bit more for these drivers as the temperatures rise when the sun comes back up. Now partly cloudy, was fully cloudy, now partly cloudy. still no threat of rain just yet, as Winter now goes past Gut Gazelle. And Gut Gazelle may be under threat from Daharo here shortly. Petrovkinen now opened a gap to Bush behind. Bush now a second and a half. Vasquez 5 seconds behind, able to keep that car calm, just keep those tires in good shape. Same with Harrell and Wagner and Darnell behind. Now, the development for the leaders here is a large group of cars up ahead. The battling cars, Gut Gazelle, Daharo, Winter, Harris, eventually Miller, Merkel, Kane. These leaders are lapping faster than the rest of the field. Car number 24 of Cook coming in for a second stop. I think there is a strategy going for to go very long on the final stop, as Cook comes in the second car to take their second pit stop, the first one being Walker. Johnston, I believe, allowing Atwell by Atwell, Daharo, Gut Gazelle, Winter, Harris. All this group of cars that the leaders are rapidly approaching. These large groups of cars are very easy pickings for cars that are lapping on their own on a different strategy. Bird in P7 leading the Pro-Am class, with Mott just 2 seconds behind and Harvey 5 seconds behind Mott. The entire Pro-Am podium here within a handful of the track. As Bird leading Mott with the Heiderstadt Mustang behind, splitting the two Pro-Am drivers. Petrovkinen coming through campus, eventually into Stavelot, is your leader, has grown a second the gap to Bush. Now we'll have to see if that gap updates. Kane with a couple cars behind, the 93 of Merkel. Kane currently P4 in the Pro-Am class. Merkel P5, Miller P6, and Harris P7. Winter now past Gut Gazelle, has his sights set on Harris, and Winter could be looking at an overtake here very early into this next lap. Car number 777, Johnston, off the track once again at Blanchimont. As Cook has come back out of the pit lane after serving that second pit stop. Seeing some variance in pit strategy, but Harris gets a drive-through penalty. Extremely unfortunate for Harris, was running very, very close with these silver cars, these Pro-Am cars ahead. Will now have to pull into the pits and serve a drive-through penalty like the car behind him, Winter, did earlier on around that first pit cycle. Petrovkinen now opening the gap to Bush behind to 3 seconds. The gap from Bush to Vasquez is not dropping very much, though. Petrovkinen having a field day with the field right now, as we are approaching the second pit stop. Again, we are seeing some variance in pit strategy out on track. Harris, with that drive-through penalty, is now no longer racing Winter, and may see Harris give that position up, may not. As Harris and Miller try to go side by side through campus, Winter once again finding himself in an uncomfortable position. Two cars that he knows he's faster than, trying to get around them, but nowhere to go, not enough space. Winter may look to try the outside around Stavelot, but there is not enough room at the outside of the track for that. But three cars all within a blanket, as Winter now is set up around the outside of Harris, and I think Winter may try to thread the needle between. Winter does thread the needle between. I think they may know that they're not racing him and allow him to go through as they come through Blanchimont. Winter ahead of Harris. Harris ahead of Miller, but Harris still has that drive-through penalty that will need to be served here very, very shortly. And does Harris pull off into the pits? Harris does pull off into the pits and serves that drive through. Hopefully does not get another drive through or a stop and go for speeding in pit lane. That would be absolutely devastating for Harris. Johnston also came into the pits to serve a second pit stop. We are seeing 3 drivers serving very, very short pit stops, or very short stints, as Johnson stopped on track to allow some cars to go by. And there's a car behind of Winter, who was, I am not sure exactly what happened there, but Winter did come to a stop, I believe. And Winter now losing a handful of positions because of that. I think Winter may have gone into the rear end of Johnston there. And as Harris comes to the end of the pit lane, drama for Winter, as Winter was in a very good position to reclaim this race, does have some bad luck befall his way. And now Winter will have to come back into the pit lane and repair that car. Harris got a speeding penalty got a speeding penalty coming through the pit lane, coming into the pit lane, and does get that stop and go penalty, and that is absolutely crushing for Harris. Petrovkin is still your leader, growing a 4-second gap to Busch behind. Vasquez now found a second on Busch. Harrell now 12 seconds behind, coming through turn 13 and eventually down into Puan. I say turn 13, it may be turn 12. That turn after Bruxelles and before Puan. Bird now behind Mott, and I think Mott has overtaken Bird. Bird was in the lead in the Pro-Am class, but there may be a little bit of different pit strategy there, as Bird still in a good position. 7 seconds the next car behind of Harvey. As your leader now coming across some traffic, that traffic being the Lamborghini of Norman, and we'll have a little bit more traffic ahead to deal with. Car number 66 of Atwell with Gut Gazelle just half a second behind. Aston Martins cannot seem to get away from each other. It's been Aston Martin on Aston Martin drama all night. Atwell and Gut Gazelle in the slipstream of Atwell, as Miller comes into the pit lane, I believe, to repair some damage. Winter comes into the pit lane to, I know, repair damage on that Porsche. Harris will be coming into the pit lane shortly to serve this stop and go penalty. Heiderstadt now running on their own, Mertzen running on their own, Cook running on their own, Johnston running on their own, and Walker running on their own, as Johnston, Walker, and Cook all on a separate pit strategy that Miller and Winter will be joining soon. Harris now coming down the pit lane to serve this 30-second stop and go penalty, and this will be an absolutely crushing penalty, as it will drop Harris very far down the order. Wagner currently P4 in Pro, as Metrovkin, your overall leader, is the AM leader as well, as a lot of these pro drivers, or actually the majority of the cars out on track, have just found their own space. It is now just push, push, push. Bring the car home as fast as you can. Atwell and Gut Gazelle here together. Gut Gazelle goes wide at curve at Paul Friere. And Oliver is going to be in the car for the next 2 stints. Car number 93 of Merkel with DeHaro behind. That gap has closed up quite a bit. It may have been a mistake for Merkel, but DeHaro all over the rear. as they come through Lost Source. DeHaro looks to the inside of Merkel, is not able to find the space there, but will be fully in the slipstream as they head down Eau Rouge and then eventually into the Kimmel Strait. Merkel just wrangling that car uphill through Eau Rouge, eventually into Radion. Does DeHaro have enough pace in that Audi to keep up with that Mustang down the Kimmel Strait? I don't think so. And Johnston gets a drive-through penalty for track limits and will come down the pit lane to serve that penalty now. Petrovkinen cycling through traffic ahead. Car number 65 of DeHaro did get a yellow flag there, as we got a car around of Norman at Lecumbe with no one around to be entangled with there, but does have some damage on the front of that car and will have to repair that damage. Mark Bird comes into the pit lane and Oliver will be taking the wheel. Walker coming into the pit lane to serve the final pit stop. Does have a lot of damage on that car and will repair this, but it will be here to the end for Walker, as the majority of the field has more than 2 pit stops left to make. Or has 2 pit stops left to make, not more than 2 pit stops, but has 2 pit stops left to make. Johnston clears the drive-through. Car number 55 of Rodriguez around at the exit of Lost Source. May have been a touch, may not, as Kelta now assumes P2 in AM. Rodriguez down to P3. Wilson, P4 in AM. Perot, P5. Petrovkinen with Bush. Bush now closing up that gap, but still has to make their way through the same traffic that Petrovkinen does. Vasquez also following through. Does not seem to be much of a deviation of strategy from this top 3. Harrell following behind, Wagner following behind, Darnell following behind. Car number 47 gets a drive-through for track limits. That's Miller, was running a great race so far, but that drive-through penalty is going to be very big and a very crushing blow for Miller in that Ferrari 296. As the sun comes back up, you should have the lights coming off any second now. It is partly cloudy. The track will definitely warm up, as it is pretty cold out here now. And with Petrovkinen in a heap of traffic, Bush trying to maximize this traffic as much as possible, use the hindrance caused by the traffic to close up the gap to Petrovkinen as much as possible. Vasquez will do the same, as these drivers are now within just a small portion of track from each other, as they have been the top 3 overall. Harrell now on their own will also be cycling through. Wagner, Darnell. Johnston going wide, allowing Kelta to go by. Car number 42 of Walker is around at Lecumbe and brings that car into the pits, and I believe it may be on the trailer for Walker. It is on the trailer for Walker. Unfortunate for Walker there. Norman in the pits. Mertson was in the pits. Comes out, but I believe does not, the pit stop may not have counted. Mertson still showing 2 stops. I hope that's an error, but Mertson may have to come back down the pit lane. Miller serving drive-through penalty as the sun is coming up more and more. We're not seeing any rain in the forecast yet. That does not mean that the rain can creep up or can't creep up at any moment. Car number 12, Norman, gets a stop-and-go penalty for speeding in pit lane. extremely unfortunate for Norman, was coming in to serve their routine pit stops and now has to come back in on an unscheduled stop for a 30-second stop-and-go penalty. Merkel coming in to serve a drive-through. Norman with that stop-and-go. Miller serving their drive-through. Darnell in the pits. First of the leaders, maybe an undercut strategy from Darnell here, as Darnell would be the leader on strategy right now. They will take a lap, but they will be the furthest ahead on strategy. Bird, the next furthest ahead, did take their stop. Oliver in the car now, and Oliver pushing, as they are looking to pass, or Gut Gazelle is the next car ahead for them. They are making their way through some lap traffic, or not lap traffic, traffic that has lapped them after they took their pit stop. Petrovkinen and Busch still holding their gaps to each other. It is now fully cloudy. We may potentially have some rain moving this way. Again, any rain that we get in this race as we are approaching that halfway point in about 3 minutes, any rain that we get in this session should be a quick burst, so it could be hiding anywhere inside that 30-minute range or that 2-hour range, as we have an hour left in this race. Vasquez still on their own, holding the gap steady to Busch. Drain and Harvey here in battle. Harvey P2 in Pro-Am. Drain P5 in Pro. And Harvey in that Sun Energy iconic Mercedes AMG GT3 livery, trying to find a way past the Ferrari 296 of Drain. As we've got more pit stops, Atwell coming into the pits. Heiderstadt with a drive-through penalty to serve. Norman served their, coming in to serve their stop-and-go penalty. Atwell to serve a second pit stop. Darnell, now the furthest car ahead with one stop left to go. And now we come into the crucial pit section, as with an hour left, do you pit early and go long? Do you pit later and go short with less fuel in the car? The strategy develops. Petrovkinen still in P1, Busch P2, Vasquez P3, Harrell P4, Wagner P5. Petrovkinen, your overall and AM leader. Kelta P2 in AM. Wilson P3 in AM, making their way past the AMG GT3 of Johnston. Winter with that Porsche now repaired, one stop left, and now with their unfortunate incidents and having to repair that damage, the strategy has opened up for them. They are on one stop left. They are the fourth car with one stop left to go, and could find some crucial strategy here, as we've just got clouds cycling their way through. A little bit of partly cloudy, sunny, fully cloudy. The conditions are changing. There is still that chance of rain, but we have not seen any rain yet. It is a beautiful morning here in Belgium. Rodriguez coming into the pits. Heiderstadt serving the drive-through. Atwell off the jacks coming out of the pits. It is a clean stop. Kane in the pit lane to serve their second pit stop, as we are now at the halfway point here in the Spa 2.4 hour in the TRC Summer SRO Series. Mertzen also coming into the pit lane. Vasquez in the pit lane. Big development in the top three. Vasquez going for the undercut on the leaders ahead. It did gain him some time to Harrell behind. Did open the gap to Harrell, or from Harrell. Busch and Metrovkinen, as Metrovkinen has now opened that gap over 4 seconds, was under 3 seconds, has improved by about half a second there. But Vasquez going for the undercut, 1 hour left, and it will be 1 stop left for Vasquez. It needs to be a perfect stop for Vasquez if Vasquez is looking to improve here, use this pit strategy to gain as much time as possible. And the leaders cycling through some traffic with Darnell, the leading car on 1 stop left to go, is about to be lapped by the leading overall car of Metrovkinen. Vasquez still in the pits, as I think Vasquez may lose a lap here on pit strategy, depending on how long it takes for Vasquez to come out here. Will be down on positions, but has not lost a lap yet, has not been passed by the leaders yet. Kane off the jacks, rolling out of the pits. A clean stop for Kane, as we have some sun on the track now, and that will raise that track temperature and allow the lap times to come down, warm those tires up. Perot coming into the pit lane to serve their second stop. Vasquez now out of the pits, a clean stop from them. Drain and Harvey still doing battle as they come down the hill into Puan. Touch of dirt kicked up by the number 93 of Merkel ahead. Harvey and Drain still in battle here. Everyone seems to have picked their fighting partner or their sparring duo and stuck to it the majority of this race. Gutgazelle comes into the pits. Needs to be a clean stop from them. Wagner comes in the pits. Metrovkinen comes in the pits. Metrovkinen looking for the undercut on Bush as Bush stays out. Now Bush leads laps for the first time in this race. As previously, Bush stayed out and Metrovkinen came in. Now, Bush does have the fastest lap, so Bush has pace in that Aston Martin. Does Bush have enough pace to close that gap in the pit lane? Metrovkinen hoping for the undercut. Bush may try to go for the overcut, as Metrovkinen and Wagner in the pit lane now. Drain and Harvey both come into the pit lane. Very, very close. This will be a race in pit road. Who got on the brakes the fastest? Who gets in the box the fastest? Who turns the car off the fastest? Who gets on the jacks the fastest? Who comes off the jacks the fastest? And who is the fastest back on the throttle? This could be a position change in the pit lane. Both of these drivers, as long as they take tires, would be okay and would come out at the same, but if one driver does not take tires, then they would get the position over the other. Wilson comes into the pit lane. Gutgazelle now down in the pits. Metrovkinen comes out ahead of Kelta, is currently P4 overall. And Bush, is it going to be a reactionary stop from Bush this lap, or will Bush stay out? It is not a reactionary stop from Bush. Bush is on a set strategy, and Bush is staying out still with 2 stops left to go. Metrovkinen has 1 stop left to go, and now the strategy has opened up. Car number 14 of Gutgazelle, unfortunate for Gutgazelle, speeding in pit lane, gets themselves a 30-second stop-and-go penalty, and will have to come back into the pit lane to serve that. Johnston serving their final pit stop in the pit lane. Merkel and Perot in battle here, sister cars. There seem to be a lot of battles between the same make, as Merkel goes wide at campus. That does give Perot an advantage as they head into Stavelot. Both of these cars very, very good in terms of top end. Merkel goes wide at curb at Paul Friere. Harrell now rolling out, or rolling into the pit lane, that is. Bush, the lone survivor out on track does have a small window of clean air before he will come onto the rear end of Darnell and then eventually Wagner. Mott will assume P2 here once he gets past Harrell. And Metrovkinen in P1, or P4 currently, will assume P3. Cannot call Metrovkinen your overall leader on strategy because Busch still may be able to hold on to the lead if Busch is able to close up the gap enough. Metrovkinen did find a great window to pit, does not have anyone in front of their windshield for a long ways. Metrovkinen in purely clean air. Busch is in a little bit of traffic as Gut Gazelle ahead with that drive-through, or that stop-and-go penalty allows Busch to go past. And Busch will come on to Darnell shortly. Harris and Rodriguez in battle here, Aston Martin and Mustang. And Busch stays out. Did not pit yet. We have a battle for position here. Rodriguez goes for the move on Harris in the braking zone into the bus stop. Is Rodriguez too late though? Rodriguez is not, hits it perfect. Is Harris able to fight back? I don't think so. Harris gets that move closed off, or Rodriguez gets that move closed off on Harris, but Harris does get the run out of the bus stop into La Source. Does Harris go for the lunge and close the move? No, he does not. Rodriguez takes the position and falls, or Harris falls behind Rodriguez. Drain and Harvey still in battle here. Bird now onto the back of this fight. And this is the fight for the P2 spot in the Pro-Am class. This group of cars, this little trio of Drain, Harvey, and Bird lapping together as they have been for quite a long time. Bird into the slipstream of Harvey though, as the youngin', as you could call him in the car, the little bird of Oliver, will finish the race out. Father got the stint in, and it is now time for the youngin' to do the work. As Bird, eyeing the move on Harvey down into Bruxelles, does not go for it. Car number 93 of Merkel in the pits. Car number 727 of Kelta in the pits. Harvey, a little bit of a bobble at the exit of turn 12 or 13. I can't remember which one that is. So come down into Pouan. Bird eyes the move on the inside. It would have been an extremely ambitious move, and I thought there was going to be contact there for sure, but Bird backs out. Quick reactions from both drivers there as they live to fight another day, but Bird showing that he has got the pace and is ready to get past that Mercedes of Harvey. And Bird all over the rear bumper of Harvey. What this is doing is allowing Drain to pull away in this fight. Now, Bird setting up the next overtaking opportunity into Blanchimont. But does Bird have a run out of Curva Palfriere? It is going to be a drag race down the backstretch into Blanchimont. Does Oliver try it around the outside? Does try it around the outside. Secures that move. Harvey goes wide. And Bird takes the position away. Sights set on Drain next. Busch now comes into the pit lane, your race leader. And that will allow Mott to assume the lead here shortly. Metrovkinen a while back. Busch still not stopped yet. And as Metrovkinen coming out of Stavelot, it will be a 30-second pit stop for Busch. If Busch takes tires, Busch may not take tires, may take tires here and ride them out to the end. No way to know their strategy. As Mott also comes into the pit lane and gets that car slowed down before the pit limiter line. Metrovkinen coming out of Blanchimont now, as Busch is on the jacks. But is Busch going to have enough time to get out ahead of Metrovkinen? I don't think so. Metrovkinen coming out of the bus stop. And if Busch is not rolling soon, then Metrovkinen will take the position back. Busch still on the jacks as Metrovkinen is coming down the pit straight into Eau Rouge. Busch is off the jacks now, but it is too little too late. Metrovkinen reassumes the lead ahead of Busch. And it is quite the margin from Metrovkinen with the undercut. We'll have to wait for the timing boards to update, but a very good strategy call for Metrovkinen has opened up the gap to Busch behind by quite a large margin. Mott still in the pit lane. Vasquez will be the next to cycle through, as Vasquez is now found themselves onto the rear bumper of Busch, and the undercut from Vasquez also played into Vasquez's hand. Busch, I believe, lost out by staying out so long, staying out on track so long. Will now be under attack from Vasquez on warmer tires. There's still one stop left to go. All of these drivers still have another pit stop to serve as Heiderstock comes in. DeHaro still needing to serve 2 stops with 50 minutes left to go. But big development in the overall lead as Vasquez is now on the prowl hunting for P2 away from Busch. And as Metrovkinen rides off into the sunset with that excellent strategy call, I don't know how they gained so much time in the pit lane. 10 seconds to Busch behind, and Harrell gets a drive-through penalty from P4 overall. Was running a great race, has a drive-through penalty to serve, and that will surely drop Harrell back quite a few positions. Extremely unfortunate for Harrell. Mott further back with Cook, lap traffic ahead, and DeHaro behind. DeHaro is on a separate strategy though, has not served their second pit stop. Multiple cars not having served their second pit stop. Rodriguez still needing to come in 2 more times. DeHaro needing to come in 2 more times. And Heiderstock is in, will have 1 more pit stop to complete. And this is where the prime strategy comes in. Where do you take this final pit stop? Do you run these tires out for their stint and pit with just a few minutes left to go? Do you pit very quickly after this second stop and go for a long final stint if you think you have the pace to undercut the cars ahead? Vasquez and Busch. Vasquez eyeing the move down into Lecumbe. It is not going to happen there, as the battle for P2, the podium fight, coming here after some pit lane drama. Busch has found himself on the back foot under attack from Vasquez, as Vasquez is all over the rear of this Aston Martin. And Busch, with newer tires, does have an advantage later on, but needs to get those tires up to temperature, and Vasquez has had a bit more time to do so than Busch. Busch opening up a gap here slightly as they run down the hill towards Pouan. And Harrell now serving that drive-through penalty, almost through serving that drive-through penalty. Bird comes into the pit for the undercut. Bird will be the leader on pit strategy. Wonder what this strategy is. I'm sure it's tires and fuel for 45 minutes or more. Enough to get to the end of this race. Need some safety laps in there for sure. But Bird on the bold strategy call will be the furthest ahead on pit strategy once they come down the pit lane. Harrell now stopped, and I believe Harrell has put that car on the trailer after that drive-through penalty. That does move Bird up a position. And this stop from Bird will be very crucial, as this is an interesting strategy call here. It is going to be the long stint to the end. 45 minutes definitely doable on a fuel tank and one set of tires. But will it be enough to pay off? Only one way to find out, and they are going to do so. Metrovkinen still your leader. That Porsche that we heard, or one of two Porsches that we heard, the 998 of Metrovkinen and the 997. Actually, I say the 997. You would think the 997 is a Porsche, but it's actually a Mustang of Perot. Busch and Vasquez in the background, still locked in battle. The fight for P2 overall. Vasquez eyeing this move once again. Does Vasquez have the cojones to go for it? Does not. Backs out of it and just begins following behind Busch longer. But the longer that Vasquez follows behind Busch, the more developed Busch's tires get. And Busch does have the newest tires out of this pair. Still one stop left to go, and it could be a crazy strategy call from either of these drivers to get past one another. But I think if Busch goes in, Vasquez would go in. Vasquez may try to catch Busch out. I don't think either driver is thinking about Metrovkinen in the lead, having a nice Sunday drive out on the bright and sunny track. I don't think we're going to see any rain in this race. The rain chance was there, but I don't think it came out to play. DeHaro in the pits to serve their second stop. Bird out of the pit lane clean, no penalties, but damage on the car. I think there may have been some damage with some cars coming out of the pits. I am not exactly sure what happened there, but that is extremely unfortunate for the father-son duo there. They may still have a car that is competitive enough to bring it home, as they will be able to undercut some of the cars ahead. But unsure exactly how much damage that car has. That damage was not there when they came into the pits previously. We'll have to see how their race develops from here on out. Busch and Vasquez still locked in battle as they come up the pit straight, headed towards La Source. Does Vasquez have the pace to get this move done this time around? As Busch and Vasquez race down the hill, Vasquez fully in the slipstream. Will Vasquez be able to close that gap enough by the end of the Kimmel Straight to get that move into the braking zone of Lacombe? It does seem to be a better run out of Eau Rouge and Radion for Vasquez. Busch goes defensive on the inside. Vasquez lined up on the outside. Does Vasquez go for the late braking into Lacombe and try and put that car at the outside for the inside into the second part of the chicane? Does not have the room to do so, and it is just a replay of what we've seen the last 3 laps. And the longer that Vasquez waits for this move, the less tire advantage Vasquez has. Busch defending like a lion, holding on to this position. Gutgazelle getting a drive-through penalty will have to come and serve that outside of the scheduled pit stops, also with some damage on that car. Harris comes into the pit lane to serve their final pit stop, and Bird comes back into the pit lane to repair their car, throwing off their strategy. They were doing well, but I am unsure of exactly what happened. Maybe an incident on cold tires. Vasquez still just following behind Bird as they are now coming across some traffic that could throw a wrench in this battle. Now the gap has grown. Vasquez lost out a little bit. I think it may have been due to that traffic, and now Busch has gained some breathing room to Vasquez behind. And that is exactly what Busch needs. It's actually what both of these drivers need. They both need to kind of work together if they want to close up onto the leader of Metrovkinen. But the overall win does not matter, as they are both fighting in the pro class, so this is the fight for the pro lead as well. But P2 and P3 overall. Unfortunate, Oliver. Extremely unfortunate. As we see Bird coming out of the pit lane after repairing the damage on that car. Vasquez still in the slipstream of Busch, but nowhere near as close as they were on the previous lap. The last time they were scored at the end of the Sector 1 marker, the Sector 1 timing line, the gap, the delta was 0-0-0. They were a dead heat coming across the timing line there at the end of Sector 1. Good Gazelle coming down the pit lane to serve that drive-through penalty. Metrovkin is still on their own in no man's land, no one around to contend with. Busch and Vasquez still in battle. Wagner all on their lonesome. Darnell is behind, but Darnell has gone around at Lacombe. I don't know if maybe it was an incident with lap traffic or not, but Darnell with very hot tires, it seems, does lose the car once more. And just needs to get that car back out on track. It may induce an early stop for Darnell. As Darnell with more drama, that car spinning once again. What is going on for Darnell? It is probably definitely going to be an early stop, and I think those tires are just blistering hot, as that may have killed the car for Darnell. Able to get it spun around before Mott comes through. And Darnell, with just an uncontrollable car, seems to be having a lot of trouble getting that Porsche to cooperate. And I guess those rear tires are just absolutely cooked, causing that car to be very uncontrollable. Rodriguez in the pits, Mertson in the pits. Mertson will be on their final pit stop will be clear from here to the end of the race, and I believe we are going to be seeing a lot of cars come into the pit lane very shortly. But of the leaders, who comes first? Vasquez still behind Busch, and the gap to Metrovkin is growing as they continue battling behind. Mott coming out of the bus stop. Did get ahead of Darnell. Does Darnell come into the pits? Yes, he does. Quick strategy call for Darnell to try to recover any lost time. And Darnell needs to get on the brakes. I hope that wasn't a speeding penalty. It may have been. It looked very, very close for Darnell. I hope that that is not a speeding penalty for Darnell. Winter also comes into the pit lane. Hopefully no more damage on that Porsche. The sister Porsches come in together, and that car looks to be pretty clean aside from the rubber on it. Darnell will be the furthest car ahead with no stops left to go. Metrovkinen coming through the bus stop. Does Metrovkinen come in? Metrovkinen stays out. Busch growing the gap to Vasquez behind. That tire advantage that Vasquez had earlier has completely withered away. Now, do we see pit strategy here? Does Busch come in? Does Vasquez come in? Neither driver comes in. Everyone stays out. The next car's down the line. Bird, no need to come in. Rodriguez behind. Or that would be Perot behind. Perot does not come in. Rodriguez and Kane here, not necessarily battling, but they are together on track as Rodriguez tries to go around the outside of Kane. Kane is the car ahead, and Kane comes into the pit lane. Darnell still in the pits, not off the jacks yet. Winter still in the pits, not off the jacks. Kane in the pit lane, and it will be very, very interesting as Darnell comes off the jacks and rolling. Tires smoking. Does Darnell get a speeding penalty? I hope not, but we will see. As Darnell comes out of the pit lane, and it is clean. It was just a very, very late braking for Darnell. And Darnell is now no longer required to come in. Hopefully no need to come in. Hopefully no drama for Darnell from here. Finds the Mustang of Rodriguez to slot in behind. As now Winter also coming out of the pit lane behind Darnell. And Winter doing a little bit of weaving to get those tires warmed up. Petrovkinen still your leader, and that gap's still growing. Busch and Vasquez still in battle here. Who is going to come in first between these two? This is the battle for the pro lead. As they come through campus and eventually Stavelot. Coming out of Stavelot to curb up Paul Friere. Darnell, the car behind, finding himself in some traffic. Hopefully with tires that are manageable now. Those tires earlier seemed to be absolutely unbearable. Car number 777 of Johnston is off the track, or I say off the track, they have gone into the pit lane. They did have a yellow flag, so I think they may have been, or that may have been an unintentional pit entry. Busch and Vasquez, neither driver comes in. They both stay out. Wilson now into the pit lane. P3 and Am. Cook into the pit lane. Actually, it seems to be Cook coming out of the pit lane. No, Cook is going into the box now. Johnston still in the pit lane. DeHaro with one stop left behind the Porsche of Darnell. Perot in the pit lane. Wilson still finding their way down to the box. Miller just losing the car at campus and hard into the wall. Unsure what kind of damage that will be to their car. Surely some wing damage that will need to be repaired at this next stop, and that is probably going to be the telltale sign to get that car into the pits as soon as possible. Busch and Vasquez, the battle still raging on, still developing as clouds have come back. Do we get a small rain shower here any second? I don't see any wipers coming on yet, but the cloud cover has come back. It would be very characteristic to have a rain shower here right at the very end of the race, but I don't see anything updated on the forecast yet. Mott into the pit lane to serve their final pit stop. Petrovkinen ahead of the pro leaders. As pit stops have been a great facilitator in position change. Does Petrovkinen come in here? Petrovkinen stays out. Between Busch and Vasquez, does Vasquez lead Busch with the fake out? Busch knows that if he comes in, Vasquez will follow. Does Busch come in? Busch stays out. Does Vasquez come in? Vasquez stays out. Mott, Drain, and Harvey also coming into the pit lane. Merkel coming into the pit lane. The final pit cycle has begun. It is fully underway. So we have 4 cars in the pit lane, 5 cars in the pit lane currently. Miller repairing that Ferrari 296. Merkel finding their box shortly. Gutgazelle still with that damage, still with 1 stop left. Needs to repair that car, or does not need to, but probably will repair that car at the next stop. Mertson all on their own. Gutgazelle behind. Miller in the pits. Harris coming up through Eau Rouge. Gutgazelle, Norman Looked like they were coming into the pit lane there for a second, as Merkel shows back up in the pits. Merkel in that, or Norman in that CrowdStrike Lamborghini. Atwell comes into the pit lane. Heiderstadt coming up through Eau Rouge, getting a lot of the inside curb, and a very squirrely moment for Heiderstadt coming through Eau Rouge, and Radion keeps that car pointed straight. Cook ahead, Merkel coming out of pit lane now, no more stops. Winter ahead, no more stops for them. Rodriguez still with one stop left to go, as we see Darnell and Mott ahead. That is a race for position. Bird, no more stops, but did have an extra unscheduled pit stop to repair damage. Kane, no more stops. Perot, no more stops. Wilson, no more stops. Atwell in the pit lane currently. Harvey behind Drain. As Drain, no more stops. DeHaro still with one more stop to make. And Darnell and Mott here in battle with the lap traffic of Harris up ahead. Mott trying desperately to defend against Darnell. Darnell trying to get past, as there is a large group of cars here together, as Harris bows out of that battle and allows Mott and Darnell to do battle on their own. Does Darnell go for the lunge into the braking zone for the bus stop? He's close enough. He may go for it, pulls to the inside. And I think Mott allows him to give the space. And Darnell goes to the inside of the bus stop and assumes a position ahead of Mott. Kelta still with one stop. None of the top five have come into the pits. Car number 65, DeHaro now in the pit lane. Metrovkinen at Bruxelles with Busch and Vasquez. This battle still raging on. I don't know how they can race this close for so long. They've been racing like this, or both drivers have been racing like this, albeit not with the same people, but pretty much for the entire race. And this battle right here has been raging on for quite some time. Busch and Vasquez very respectful between each other, but both very rapid drivers. Busch does hold the fastest lap, but Vasquez scored just a quarter of a second behind, as DeHaro, Heiderstadt, Norman, Gutgazelle, and Mertzen all in the pit lane to serve their final pit stops. The big question, when does this leading trio, when does the leading five, when does the top five come into the pits? Darnell is in prime position to hopefully be reaping a few seconds from having all of their pit stops completed. Metrovkinen coming down to the bus stop. Is this when they come in, or are they still holding out? No, or Metrovkinen does not have the fastest lap, and Metrovkinen comes in. Very, very crucial stop here from Metrovkinen. Needs to be as perfect as possible. Does have a little bit of a gap to rely on, a little bit of a buffer, if you will. Busch and Vasquez, neither driver come in, and they will assume the lead. Busch will assume the lead ahead of Metrovkinen here very shortly. Metrovkinen, it's got to be a good stop. Does have a little bit of breathing room, but no mistakes, no penalties for Metrovkinen, as that would concede the lead to Busch or Vasquez, whichever driver wins out in this battle of the Giants currently. Battle for the pro win. Could potentially be the battle for the overall win. Vasquez following behind that Aston Martin. BMW versus Aston Martin. Kelta in the pits, now pulling into the box. As Kelta finds the box, gets that car shut off and up on the jacks. Metrovkinen does the same. Busch and Vasquez very close to each other. A little bit of a slide from Busch. Does that open up the door to Vasquez behind? Rodriguez still needing to serve a pit stop. Harris in the pits. Miller still needing to serve a pit stop. And Metrovkinen now coming out of the box. Does the undercut help Metrovkinen? Does he need the undercut? Is it a perfect stop from Metrovkinen? Cannot afford a drive-through penalty here. And it is clean from Metrovkinen coming out of the pit lane. And it is a fight from here to the end. Lots of open air for Metrovkinen. That may have been the deciding factor of when they decided to come into the pits. Busch now 1.3 seconds ahead of Vasquez. Does Vasquez take the pit here and try to get the undercut? The undercut has been very strong. It put him in the position to get onto the rear bumper of Busch in the first place. And it did help Vasquez very nicely. Does Busch come in and force Vasquez to follow? Busch stays out. Does Vasquez come in? Vasquez does come in. Vasquez going for the undercut. Needs to be a perfect stop for Vasquez here. Cannot afford a penalty. Does seem to be slowed down enough. And now Busch assumes the lead on their own. Does Vasquez get the undercut again? Does the undercut give Vasquez the position? Busch has been caught out from the pit strategy twice now. Does Busch stay out a long time like he did before? Does he come in reactionary on this lap? They say do not pit in reaction. Stay and stick to your strategy. Is Busch on a separate strategy? Wagner finds themselves in P3. And Wagner comes in. Needs to be a great stop from Wagner. Very, very close to the inside wall at the end of the pit lane. And hard on the brakes to get on that pit limiter, and it looks to be a good pit entry for Wagner as well. Vasquez now coming into the box, about to put the car on the jacks. And the car goes on the jacks, but it looks like Vasquez, when he comes out of the pit lane, will be in some traffic behind. And Vasquez gets that car stopped and shut off. Metrovkinen will assume the lead, well, the provisional lead, as Metrovkinen will get past Vasquez. Busch still out. Does Busch come in this lap? Does Busch continue staying out? The strategies are all over the place now at the front of the field. Metrovkinen has got the undercut. Right now will be scored ahead of Vasquez. Vasquez now comes out of the pit lane. The stop is clear. It's a good stop from Vasquez. And will Vasquez be ahead of Busch when he comes back in? Vasquez finds a window to re-enter the track. And Vasquez currently P3 overall, same position that he was in. Is Busch once again going to be caught out in pit strategy? Does Busch come in this lap? Busch does. It's a reactionary stop from Busch. It needed to be, though. Busch could not afford to stay out. But will Busch be able to hold on to the position from the pit lane? Very, very crucial stop for Busch. Very crucial lap for Vasquez, as this is going to be the race for the pro lead. And eventually, overall, the pro win. Perot and DeHaro in battle here. Not in class, but a battle on track nonetheless. As Wagner comes out of the pits just beside them to assume P3 overall. Darnell about a quarter of a lap behind, just coming out of the bus stop. Busch still coming down the pit lane as Vasquez coming through campus. This is the crucial deciding factor here. Does Vasquez get past Busch? Does Busch come out of the pit lane fast enough? Vasquez coming out of Stavelot. Busch has not found the box yet, is not stopped. I don't think it's looking good for Busch in terms of pit strategy right now. Vasquez just needs to get past Busch, and I think the envelope will be sealed as long as there's no mistakes from Vasquez, no surprises here to the end. It will be Vasquez winning in pro. Does Busch get off the jacks fast enough? Vasquez is coming across the start-finish line now and will be coming out of Lost Source very, very shortly. When does Busch come off the jacks? Busch is off the jacks now. Vasquez is coming out of Lost Source. This is the race for the pro lead. Busch trying to get out of the pit lane as fast as possible. Vasquez coming down the hill. I don't think Busch will be able to hold on to the lead. Busch assumes the speed, is able to go up the gears as Vasquez is coming up the hill out of Eau Rouge. Where does this battle resume? I think Busch is ahead of Vasquez for now. He is, but he does not have any more speed, and there's traffic involved in this battle as well. The traffic is getting out of the way. Wilson bows out. Vasquez does have warmer tires, and now Vasquez finds himself in the same position that he was in earlier. It's got to be an extremely aggressive move from Vasquez early if he wants to get this move while he still has the advantage. This is exactly where Vasquez was on the previous pit stop cycle. Vasquez came out of the pits behind Busch on warmer tires, 1 lap older tires, but was unable to get past. Busch is going to have to defend. Busch is on the 1 lap newer, colder tires, though. And Busch defensive heading down the hill into Pouhon. It's got to be an early move from Vasquez before he loses the tire advantage. As they come out of Pouhon, it is a battle for the pro lead here between Busch and Vasquez. Coming through campus, Busch on the colder tires does get a lot of the curve on the inside, more than you would prefer to. As they come out of campus, Vasquez all over the rear bumper of Busch. Will it be a move into the braking zone at the bus stop for Vasquez? Vasquez very crucially needs to get this move done early or will lose the advantage, because I don't think that BMW has the strength over the stint. Needs to get ahead early and needs to be able to defend. They both come out of Blanchimont down towards the bus stop. Does Vasquez go for the lunge at the bus stop? Does not. Vasquez has been able to stay onto the rear, but I think Busch may have slightly overshot the braking zone at the bus stop. Vasquez all over the rear. Will it be a dive bomb into La Source? I don't think Vasquez is close enough. Busch extremely defensive, holding the apex at the inside, forcing Vasquez to go around the outside. Vasquez lunges down into La Source, or at least thinks about it, forces Busch to go defensive. Will Vasquez have the advantage coming out side by side, coming down the pit lane as they head down into Eau Rouge? Which driver will give? I don't think either driver will give. It's a drag race down the hill as they head towards Eau Rouge. Vasquez has the outside, side by side, up through Eau Rouge. Busch loses the rear, keeps the car pointed straight, though, and Vasquez assumes P2 overall, the lead in pro. Vasquez gets ahead, but does that BMW have the strength over the stint to hold on to that lead? Busch did a great job to keep that car held together around the outside. 2 cars don't go through Eau Rouge side by side. And I'm sure that gave Busch a little bit of extra warmth in those rear tires that he wasn't looking for, but a move that needed to be done from Vasquez. That was a move out of necessity. Now Vasquez with clean air, or a little bit of clean air. Actually, Vasquez with a lot of clean air ahead just needs to run away as fast as possible. Do not make any mistakes and use your tire advantage that you currently hold to pull away from Busch. Needs to use the early strength of that BMW, because I don't think that BMW has the pace all the way to the end to defend against Busch. This race is not over yet, but it has changed for the time being. Vasquez trying to pull away from Busch. Rodriguez still 1 stop left to make. Does not really have anyone close to. They are racing Atwell actually behind, and Rodriguez would be conceding the position to Atwell when he came in. Matrovkinen still your leader, coming through the bus stop. Just under 18 minutes left to go in this race in the TRC Summer SRO Series Spa 2.4 hour. There was a chance of rain, but I don't think we had any rain. It was a little bit damp during qualifying, but the rain did not rear its ugly head here in the race. Busch trying to grow the gap to, or Vasquez trying to grow the gap to Busch behind. Vasquez is trying to hold on to the pro lead, and I think that gap is growing. Wagner P3 in pro behind DeHaro, a lap car. Darnell finding his way past the lap traffic of Rodriguez. Mott all on their own, the Pro-Am leader, Drain P5 in Pro, Harvey P2 in Pro-Am, Kelta P2 in Am, and Wilson P3 in Am. Haro P6 in Pro. And I think everyone seems to have found their own spot on track. There don't seem to be many battles beside the one that was raging on for the Pro lead. Metrovkinen is an Am driver, but has been in a commanding lead this entire race. Just an absolute masterclass effort, perfect from here so far. The race is not over yet. I am not wishing any ill will on Metrovkinen. It has been an absolute perfect race for Metrovkinen. Vasquez coming through campuses a little bit deep into the first apex of the chicane, and I think may lose a little bit of time there. The gap was around 2 seconds. We'll see where it gets scored here. The gap 1.9 did not drop very much. And Vasquez, with clean air, just trying to pull away, has broken free from the slipstream, or has broken free from Bush being in the slipstream. Rodriguez now in the pit lane to serve that final pit stop. Miller also with one stop left to serve. As the field has kind of spread out a little bit here towards the end. Mott will be under attack from Darnell. This is going to be for P5 overall, as Darnell is trying to close that gap to Mott. A little bit of Aston Martin on Porsche. It's definitely a good day to be in an Aston Martin, though. I'm sure the boys back at the factory will be very proud. Currently 3 out of 5 positions in the top 5 are Aston Martin, as we are here with Mott in the heart of racing, Aston Martin. Very, very good, honorable team there with Heart of Racing and all of their GT3 and GT4 programs. I don't think Mott would put up too much of a defense against Darnell here, as they are not racing in class. Mott is the Pro-Am leader, has nothing to lose by allowing Darnell to go by. And that gap is growing between Vasquez and Bush. 2.7 seconds now. Vasquez just needs to put their head down and push forward. No mistakes from either driver. If Bush makes a mistake, that takes him out of contention for the Pro win. If Vasquez makes a mistake, it does the same. These two drivers just one mistake away from each other. Neither can afford that mistake. And as they have clean air for a little bit, they are able to push forward. Metrovkinen still running the masterclass race up at the front of the field. Mott with Darnell closing up very slowly, though, not under attack anytime soon, as Darnell seemed all sorts of out of shape coming up the hill towards Radion at the top of the hill. DeHaro all on their own, with Mertson just behind, lurking. Miller in the pit lane to serve their final pit stop. Harris coming through Puon now. Gut Gazelle did not repair that damage on the front of that Aston Martin, but I don't think necessarily needed to, rocking the AMR colors there. Norman coming down into Bruxelles in that CrowdStrike Lamborghini Huracan Evo. And the gap between Mott and Darnell shrinking. Once again, I don't think Mott would put up much of a fight when Darnell finally comes and closes up that space in the rearview mirror. But that Porsche, that Grello Manti Porsche, is getting bigger and bigger behind. Ooh, a little bit of a slide from Darnell coming out of campus, though. And maybe Darnell is not going to be closing that gap as fast as we think. Darnell seems to be having some trouble with that Porsche, a little bit of stability issue. And Winter coming back from a few unfortunate events in the race tonight, still bringing home a good position here. Under 12 minutes left in the Spa 2.4 hour tonight. Vasquez still just pushing forward on their own. The gap to Busch behind is growing. 3.1 seconds now, almost 3.2 seconds. But almost a minute to the next car behind of Wagner. The top three in this race have definitely had a mighty display of pace. Wagner looking to get past the lap traffic of Rodriguez in the Dark Horse Mustang GT3. And Rodriguez allows Wagner to go by, and Wagner assumes the position ahead and pushes forward through Pouan. Kane and Bird look to be in a battle here very shortly. The son of the father-son duo in the car now to close out the race. And this would be for P4 in class. Bird and Kane. Bird all over the rear bumper of Kane. I don't think there's going to be any positions to be made ahead of this. But down at the hill into Pouan, Bird all over the rear of Kane. As Kane goes wide at Pouan, does that open the door for Bird? I think it might. Bird and Kane side by side. Bird goes around the outside at Campus, but it's late on the brakes. Does get it slowed down, though. A little bit of a squirrely entry into Campus, but does close the move off. And that is going to be P3 for Bird in class. Very respectable finish, especially from the father-son duo. They are the only drivers out here doing an actual driver swap here. The son of Oliver did the qualifying and first stint. The father of Mark did the second stint, and the son did the following two stints. And Kane may try to take this position back, but I think the youngin of Oliver does have pace in that car to hold on to the position for now. Metrovkinen out ahead, and I think the only thing that would cause Metrovkinen to be dropped out of the lead fight would be a miscalculation on fuel, but with the way that Metrovkinen is driving, I don't think a miscalculation on fuel is going to be a mistake that they would make. Darnell still trying to close up onto the rear of Mott there. Car number 93 with a yellow flag. I think there may have been some damage on that car. There's a little bit of fender damage there. Maybe there was a venture into the outside wall, a little bit of front bumper damage. Actually, I see damage all over the side of that car. May have been a slight collision, as we have a group of Mustangs here. Rodriguez following behind Wagner, and then Heiderstadt behind. Darnell now closing up on the rear of Mott, or was. That gap has now grown as Darnell facing more issues with the car. A big snap coming out of the exit of Lecumbe. And I think Darnell may have had some severe fall off in that car. The gap between Busch and Vasquez has shrunk. Was 3.2, but Busch has found a half a second and has the BMW pace fallen off. Is Busch going to find his way somehow back up into the battle for P1 and Pro P2 overall? It's got to be perfect from Vasquez here on out, but may be able to defend. But no mistakes from either driver. Busch still holds on to the fastest lap of the race. Metrovkinen still up in the lead. Miller with more damage after serving that final pit stop. They did repair some damage, but I think they may have gotten some more. Harris no damage, just on a race of their own. Good Gazelle still with that front end damage. Norman, no damage. Heiderstadt in that Mustang. Rodriguez in a very similar looking Mustang. Merkel in a very different looking Mustang. Cook in the Iron Lynx Lamborghini. Winter in the Herbert, or Herbert, however you say it. Porsche 992 GT3R. Atwell in the beef jerky car, it looks to be. King's Meat Snacks. Kane, coming up the hill through Eau Rouge, has definitely lost some time to the youngin' of Oliver Bird in that Lamborghini. Currently P3 in Pro-Am. Perot in a somewhat similarly liveried Mustang. DeHaro in that, I don't think following the official livery rules, Audi GT3. And Wilson in the Lucky Rabbit Chinese themed livery on that Porsche 992 GT3R. Kelta in the Ice Cream Aston Martin. Harvey in that Sun Energy iconic livery, a force to be reckoned with at the Australian mountain of Bathurst Mount Panorama. Drain in the Kessel Racing Swiss car there. And Darnell in the iconic Grello Manti EMA Porsche. Thomas Preining, Kevin Estra. Trying to think of who else would have been in that car. I want to say Matt Campbell may have been. I know he is driven for Manti, but I'm not 100% sure. And Darnell has opened up the gap to Mott quite a lot. Was in, or potentially fighting for that overall position, but is no longer. Vasquez had lost about half a second, has now gained that time back, or we will see when they come to update the timing boards. Mitrovkinen and Drain, as Mitrovkinen is lapping the Ferrari 296 of Drain ahead. And Mitrovkinen should come past the Ferrari 296 of Drain very shortly. Has a look at the inside, and I think Drain will give Mitrovkinen that position there. Yes, they will. The gap has shrunk a second now. It was 3.3, now 2.3. When they come across the line, what is it now? Still 2.3. This race is not over with what looks to be 2 laps left. It's Mitrovkinen with Drain all over the rear, as Drain maybe wants to unlap himself. But Vasquez not out of the woods yet. It is one mistake, and that looked very, very close to a track cut for Vasquez there. Warren Tires does have older tires than Busch by only a lap. But Busch, the car behind, and with traffic up ahead, what is the delta looking like now? Vasquez did find about half a second back. The gap was 2.3 at the beginning of the lap, now 2.7. This is still the battle for the pro lead, as Vasquez will now be coming on to some traffic ahead. 4 cars. Kelta, Norman, Harvey, and Atwell. As this fight is not over yet, it could come down to the very last lap. And I don't think that BMW is holding up competitive pace to Busch as much anymore. Busch has not necessarily been able to close that gap, but Vasquez has not really been able to grow it. And as they come out of Stavelot, when the timing boards update, what is it looking like? It looks to be a lot closer. 1.6 now. The gap is dropping down a second from what it was when they came out of Bruxelles. Does that BMW just have strength in certain parts of this track, or is this battle heating up with 1 lap left to go? 1.6 seconds. It's not outlandish to think that that amount of time can be gained in this 1 lap left to go. And with traffic up ahead, and Busch goes around. Busch loops it, pushing too hard at the exit of the bus stop, and that seals the deal for Vasquez. It was going to come down to a final lap shootout, but Busch loses the car, pushing a little bit too hard at the exit of the bus stop, and now Vasquez pretty much has a stamp on it, just needs to put it in the mailbox. I think that has got to be the mistake that would have guaranteed Vasquez the win. And as Vasquez seemingly rides off into the sunset, Metrovkanin will bring this time to 0 and will bring the checkered flag to this race as long as he can bring it home in one piece here. A 18.3 second lead to Vasquez ahead, and a spin from Busch at the exit of the bus stop has had what was a slight grasp of a class win completely stripped away from Busch there. Will still be on the podium, still good points, but what was going to be a class win has completely faded away for Busch. Vasquez should be able to hold on to a 9-second lead to Busch behind. Metrovkanin, your overall leader, as the time comes down to 0. This is the final lap of the race. Metrovkanin coming out of Curba Paul Friere as they head down towards Blanchimont one last time. Flying through Blanchimont, up to the bus stop, hard on the brakes, down through the gears as they come through the bus stop one final time. Metrovkanin will take the win in AM and overall. Their first win with TRC, and it is a masterclass win for Metrovkanin. Metrovkanin is your winner in the Spa 2.4 hour. Vasquez now coming to the checkered line, or the checkered flag at the start-finish line here, and Vasquez takes the class win in Pro, guaranteed by that spin from Busch at the exit of the bus stop. Busch will take home P2 in class. Wagner will take home P3 shortly. Darnell giving us some Grello donuts. Does not seem like a flavor that I would necessarily go by. Harvey giving us some Sun Energy donuts, if he can get the traction control turned off. Kelta, no donuts for them, not very hungry. Good Gazelle coming across the line with Miller behind. That will bring an end to their races. Mott all on their lonesome with 1 lap left to finish. And Winter, I believe, will be the final car out on track to come across the line to take the checkered flag. DeHaro, who didn't necessarily follow the rules of the liveries, comes across the line in P5 in class. Perot next, then Bird taking home P3 in class. The youngin bringing home P3 in Pro-Am. Atwell in the pits. Kane now comes down to the start-finish line. Mott now comes across the line. And Winter, the final car, the last car out on track, Coming through Blanchimont here one final time. Will be hard on the brakes towards the bus stop. And down through the gears for Winter. Coming through the bus stop one final time to take the checkered flag and to close out the Spa 2.4 hour in the TRC Summer SRO Series. And I believe some frustrating impacts with the wall there. Impacts out of frustration for Winter. Well, we only have so much of the field left, but Metrovkinin P1, Vasquez P2, Bush P3. Metrovkinin taking home their first win, I believe, in TRC and the AM win, the overall and AM win. Vasquez taking home the pro win. Bush P3 overall. Wagner P4 overall. Darnell P4 in class. Wagner P3 in pro. Drain P4 in pro. DeHaro P5 or P6 in pro. Drain P5 in pro. DeHaro P6 in pro. Heiderstop P7 in pro. Harrell P8 in pro. In silver, Pro-Am, Mott, your winner, Harvey P2, Bird P3, Kane P4, Cook P5, Merkel P6, Norman P7, Harris P8, Miller P9, Douglas P10, and in AM, overall and AM, your winner, Metrovkinin P1, Kelta P2, Wilson P3, Perot P4, Atwell P5, Rodriguez P6, Heiderstop P7, Gutgazelle P8, Mertzen P9, Johnston P10, Walker P11, and Gonzalez P12. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to the drivers for racing tonight. Please consider following if you are not following. Please consider subscribing if you are not subscribed, if you would like to support the streams. Thank you all for tuning in. I will be live tomorrow with yet another 2.4 hour race. I will be live streaming the XCL ATR 24 Hours in Hell qualifier. A 2.4 hour race around the Nürburgring Nordschleife with multiple drivers and multiple pit stops. It is going to be the qualifying race for the XCL and ATR Wildland Firefighter Foundation charity 24 hour next weekend that I will be on the commentating panel. Do not know exactly where I'll be, but if you want to catch me again for another 2.4 hour race in the morning, I will be on at 9 o'clock Central, 9 a.m. Central, and we will be live. There are, I believe, 17 or 18 teams. There's over 50 and 60 drivers that will be on track tomorrow for that qualifier. Make sure you tune in if you would like to check that out. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in tonight. Very, very good racing. And I will see you all. I'll see you in the morning if you would like to tune in to the XCL ATR 24 Hours in Hell 2.4 hour qualifier tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central, 3 p.m. GMT +1, whatever that means for those of you in the